Chapter 459. Kacha. Renly made some adjustments and took 3 photos of the arena. After looking at them with satisfaction, she posted them on the live stream thread to complete the request. After watching the battle for a while, she refreshed the post to see what others thought of her photography skills. Schrodinger's tiger, the photos are so blurry, said Unparalleled Dragon King. Okamoto's fan said with a funny face, Little tiger, are your hands shaking because you've been working too hard these few days? I can only tell based on the color of their clothes, said Below the Sky. Renly's eyelids twitched. She couldn't help but reply with Lu Cheng's account. They're all moving at high speed. It's good enough that you can get this effect with your phone. There was nothing wrong with her explanation, but the exclamation mark at the end seemed a little unnecessary. Little tiger, are you in a bad mood today? Asked Wonton Seller weakly. I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that you've been working too hard. You're obviously not satisfied, said Okamoto's fan, who couldn't stop talking about dirty topics. You're the one who's not satisfied, Renly retorted without holding back. You're using disgusting as funny. There was a moment of silence in the live thread. No one replied for a full 10 seconds until Wonton Seller said, stunned expression. Little tiger, you've been hacked, haven't you? Why do I feel like I'm going to scold the whole world today? Renly took a deep look at her phone and quickly exited the forum. She locked her screen and continued to watch the battle as if nothing had happened. Previously, Lu Cheng had given it his all. He had utilized his secret techniques, unique skills, on-the-spot experience, and battle talent to the fullest. Only then was he able to complete the offensive and suppress his opponent. He had almost defeated Vhagar in a short period of time. However, even though he had performed above his usual standards, the inhuman monster still managed to seize the opportunity to resist and escape from the desperate situation. He had pulled both parties back to the same starting line. Of course, after such a round of attacks, Lu Cheng could vaguely feel that his martial arts had improved to a certain extent. It wasn't referring to the specific realm of cultivation, but the level of actual combat. Bam! Vhagar's right fist was wearing a silver-white thunder glove. His punch was so powerful that Lu Cheng had no choice but to block it with the outburst of his dance stage. He used force concentration to dispel the paralysis caused by the electric shock and took a step back to defend himself. Bam bam! Vhagar's punches, elbows, kicks, and knees came one after another without any gaps. Like a tsunami of lightning, each wave higher than the previous, Lu Cheng was pressured to the point where he couldn't use the 9 words formula or prepare a simplified form of physical invulnerability. He could only use the 24 blizzard strikes to push the explosion of the dance stage to meet force with force. Bam bam! Every time Lu Cheng borrowed strength and was about to turn the situation around with 7 or 8 consecutive explosions, Vhagar would always pause for half a beat and use thunder explosion or similar moves to interrupt Lu Cheng's build-up. Then, he would return to his heavy punches and kicks, not giving his opponent time to prepare a killer move. Relying on the advantage of realm and strength, he slowly but surely wore down his opponent, slowly gaining an opportunity to win. This gave Lu Cheng almost no hope of turning the tables. He felt like he was in a situation where he was boiling a frog in warm water. He deeply experienced the horror of an inhuman expert. If there were no more accidents, he would lose for sure. This realization gradually emerged in his heart. However, he couldn't find a way to break free from the suppression. The enemy was too strong. The outcome seemed to be unchangeable. I can only take the risk. Lu Cheng made up his mind. His eyes were filled with determination. He held on to his chi and stamped his feet. His right arm swelled, and he punched with a straight punch. Bam bam bam! Vhagar's left fist, covered in a silver-white glove, punched out fiercely and collided with Lu Cheng's fist. Bam! With a muffled explosion, sparks flew. Lu Cheng's arm bounced back and his body swayed backward. Suddenly, he straightened his back and flew backward. He didn't put on any airs and landed himself in a desperate situation. How could Vagar let go of this opportunity? His thick and sturdy legs kicked, and his burly and majestic body gave chase. In an instant, he was in front of Lu Cheng. He wanted to end the battle in 2 or 3 moves. His inhuman speed was like a top 6th pin fighter with the effect of the attainment formula. At this moment, Lu Cheng didn't try to regain his footing and put on airs again. Instead, he took the opportunity to raise his hands and form a hand seal. In his mind, he outlined an ancient word that was filled with the smell of blood on the battlefield. He put himself in a desperate situation just to find a chance to use the 9 words formula. Put yourself in a situation of death and then come back to life. Army. Lu Cheng said in a low voice. His murderous aura almost materialized and pierced into Vagar's head, evoking the fear hidden deep in his heart and the fear of death. Vagar's movements slowed down. However, he was an inhuman mighty one who was often on the battlefield and tempered his mind by killing. He was only in a trance for a moment before regaining his senses. This prevented his opponent from following up with the severe warning. Lu Cheng's heart was like an ice mirror. He suppressed his frustration and gave up the chance to go for his opponent's heart. Swinging his back and bulging his muscles, he circled to the side of his opponent with the northern wind footwork. Boom! He broke through the airflow barrier in his high-speed movement and created a strong wind that blew towards his opponent's eyes. Dipper lifting dipper. Just as Vagar squinted his eyes, Lu Cheng formed another hand seal and pointed to himself. He let out a low roar from his throat, fighting. His body suddenly grew taller and his muscles bulged. He looked like a heavenly soldier from the legends. His right fist became unusually heavy and was about to strike. It's really the fighting formula. Lu Cheng and Vagar exchanged blows in a flash, so Peng Liyun couldn't be sure. Now that he heard it for the second time, he muttered to himself. Lu Cheng had already learned quite a few 9 words formulas. At the Japanese representative team, Muko Yamashita, who hadn't started his match yet, suddenly frowned. Facing the explosive fighting formula, Vagar didn't dare to be careless. His eyes glowed silver and he leaned sideways. Circles of lightning snakes circled around him and spun rapidly towards his opponent. Exclusive unique skill, lightning piercing. But at this moment, Lu Cheng seemed to have been prepared. He straightened his back and dragged his right fist to dodge the attack, causing Vagar's lightning piercing to hit the air and fly somewhere not far away. He had wasted a fighting formula in exchange for his opponent's unique skill to miss. In the sparring sessions a few days ago, Peng Liyun had dutifully imitated Vagar's fighting style. This gave Lu Cheng a good understanding of this milieu mighty one. He clearly knew that after using lightning piercing or invincible thunder explosion, there would be a short pause and he wouldn't be able to unleash a chain of attacks. This was his chance. Kacha! Lu Cheng stepped on the ground and his body shot forward like an arrow. In an instant, he was close to his opponent. His left arm was covered in a thick layer of ice armor, blocking the front. His right hand was clenched into a fist, ready to strike. At the same time, he outlined the crystal-clear and dreamy ice spirit holy light in his mind, creating a darkness with almost no heat. He planned to deal a fatal blow to Vagar, who was in the middle of a pause. Seeing that he couldn't dodge, had no strength to unleash his attacks, and would be defeated if he tried to block it head-on, Vagar's eyes were filled with hatred. His silver eyes revealed a deep coldness. Suddenly, he jumped up. He jumped high and landed his feet at an angle, stomping heavily on Lu Cheng's head. Good timing. Lu Cheng had already experienced this and was prepared. The thundercloud in his mind roared, breaking through the ice spirit. His bent knees and slightly arched back suddenly straightened, and he flew up vertically. His right fist went straight up towards his opponent, who couldn't change his direction in midair. Sky rocket cannon. Head blow. If they were to exchange blows like this, Lu Cheng would at most bounce back and stagger. On the other hand, Vagar's mind would definitely become rigid. In that case, he would fall from the air like a stone and land heavily on the ground, giving Lu Cheng the perfect opportunity to win. At this moment, Vagar twisted his back and crossed his legs, weaving a sizzling silver-white electric ball. It fell slowly like a bubble and hit Lu Cheng, who couldn't avoid it. Using the reverse momentum, he shifted his position in mid-air and moved away slightly. This was an immature move that he had never used in actual combat before. Bzzzt. Clenching his fist, Lu Cheng, who was flying up into the air, brushed past Vagar while his body was numb. He didn't manage to hit him. Bam! Vagar swung his elbow towards his opponent's chest. Lu Cheng barely blocked with his left arm, which was protected by ice armor, but he was sent flying. With this exchange of blows, Vagar gained the momentum to land first. He bounced and dashed towards his opponent. As Lu Cheng gathered his strength and unleashed his supernatural ability to throw a giant fireball, Vagar nimbly changed his direction and dodged it. Boom! Lu Cheng's final move hit the arena, creating a strong explosion. Waves of red flames and violent shockwaves rolled out. Bam! Just as he was about to shift his position, Vagar caught up with him. He leaped up, turned into an electric drill, and hit Lu Cheng with a sizzling sound. Lu Cheng blocked with his arms and saw a flash of light. He was paralyzed on the spot. When he regained consciousness, he smelled a burnt smell. His eyes reflected the figure of the referee raising his right hand. Vagar wins. The hoarse voice reverberated, and the entire Xinxiang Stadium erupted in excitement. P.S. It's nearing the Dragon Boat Festival, so I have to go to my mother-in-law's house. I'll be on my way in the afternoon. The second update is at midnight. I'll continue tomorrow. Chapter 460. Amidst the cheers of those who understood and those who didn't, Lu Cheng took a deep breath and shook his aching arm. He came back to reality from his numb state and accepted his defeat. He felt that he should be happy. To be able to force Vagar, who had reached the inhuman stage more than a year ago, to the brink of defeat twice was definitely something to be proud of. He could leave with his head held high. However, he couldn't bring himself to be happy. His heart was filled with faint sighs and regrets. Just a little bit more, just a little bit more, there were no problems with my choice of tactics, judgment and improvisation. In fact, they could even be considered outstanding. But there was still a little bit of difference. I couldn't grasp the opportunity to win. Logic told him that this was already the best result. If he hadn't cautiously used the ice armor, his arm might have fractured in the last two heavy blows and he would have to bid farewell to the King of Youth Pro League early. However, Lu Cheng was still unwilling to give up. He desperately wanted to make up for that little bit of difference. And now, the most practical and possible way was to grasp the essence and charm of the Emperor Yen diagram as soon as possible. He wanted to elevate the Zhurong force and begin the transformation of his body. Thoughts whirling in his head, he gave Vagar a post-match salute and turned to the edge. He walked down the stone steps and came before the match supervisor. Before he could speak, the supervisor took out his wallet and handed it back to him. Seeing the wallet alone, Lu Cheng was stunned for a moment. He was about to send a message to Yen Zhika. Then he realized that his phone wasn't with him. He had given it to his teammates to take pictures. He shook his head and laughed. Keeping the wallet, he walked back to where Peng Liyun and the rest were, gradually recovering from the electric shock. In the arena, the majestic Vagar looked deeply at Lu Cheng's retreating figure. He walked to the center of the arena and picked up the dusty and tattered general's hat. He flicked it a few times but didn't put it back on. He turned and left, not even lingering in the Xinxiang Stadium. Amazing, Shikoku. On the Japanese's side, the samurais who were watching the match exclaimed in awe. Ichii Sakata's face was pale. He was even more shocked than when he lost to Lu Cheng yesterday. He knew that the gap between them wasn't small, but he didn't expect it to be so big that it made him feel hopeless. In the battle just now, Lu Cheng, who wasn't at the inhuman stage, had displayed strength close to the inhuman stage. There was a fundamental difference between them. How did he do it? He really hadn't advanced yet. Using Arcana. I have some too. I used to be called a monster, but now I have to admit that some people are the real monsters. Muko Yamashita retracted his expression and turned to look at his fellow disciples. Yorangjin, if Lu Qing can reach this level at this stage, you can too. Don't be in a hurry to cultivate wave. Once you reach his current level, things will be much simpler. Yes. Ichii Sakata was touched, but his tone was not confident enough. Muko Yamashita raised his thick eyebrows and said in a deep voice, our extreme Hadu sect doesn't need cowards. Yes. Ichii Sakata shivered, his expression turning solemn. In the live stream thread of the Longhu Club forum, everyone had already forgotten about the small incident from before. Once again, they were passionately discussing the battle between Vagar and Lu Cheng. What a pity. Biting her handkerchief with tears in her eyes, Wonton Seller was the first to post. It is indeed a pity, I even thought that Lu Cheng could win just now. Unparalleled Dragon King replied. In the future, we will have to divide the realms further. Between the inhuman and normal Dan stage, and between the 5th pin and the 6th pin, there will be a separate category. This category will be called Lu Cheng. Road to the Arena said, damn it, my understanding of the world was almost overturned by him. If it was someone who had just advanced to the inhuman stage, he might have really won. I feel that Lu Cheng is about to break through. Pig Riding Knight suggested a possibility seriously. How is that possible? Even a rocket wouldn't be that fast. A plumber eating mushrooms followed with a spitting expression. That's right, breaking through also needs to follow the fundamentals. Invincible Punch added. This guess was quickly drowned out. Brahman said with a bouncing voice. I know that my idol has done well to achieve this level, but I was still gloomy and unhappy just now. But seeing you guys praise him, I'm happy again. Continue to praise me, I can take it. Eternal Nightfall, come and see. I saw it long ago, I was busy building and praying that Lu Cheng won't get an inhuman in the next round. Yan Shaoling took the time to reply. Somewhere in the stands, Lu Cheng walked towards Peng Liyun and high-fived him. I've always found Vagar an eyesore. I thought he looked pretty cool in a police cap. But now he doesn't have one, said Peng Liyun humorously, complimenting Lu Cheng tactfully. Sure enough, other than being in a daze and challenging others, the great Devil King was just like the rumors. He was an easygoing and easy to get along with. Lu Cheng found Peng Liyun's words very down-to-earth and couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, and Chaoyang also high-fived him. Brilliant. Ha, I was so focused on your match that I forgot to take a picture. Take a picture. Lu Cheng thought of something and asked with a smile, so, you forgot to help me post? Nope, we still remember this. Renli is the best at taking pictures, so we passed the task to her, and Chaoyang, who had brought his own digital camera, answered without blushing at all. Hearing herself mentioned, Renli took a step forward and passed the phone to Lu Cheng. She nodded heavily. Someone was bad-mouthing you in the forum previously, so I helped you to scold them. Huh? Lu Cheng was confused. When he realized what might have happened, he suddenly had a bad feeling. He lowered his head, unlocked the screen, entered the forum, clicked on the live broadcast post and scrolled through the content. Thank you so much. The corners of his mouth twitched as he hurriedly replied, thank you. The person who spoke just now wasn't me. I wasn't hacked, but I felt that my photography skills weren't good enough, so I asked someone for help. I didn't expect her to help me post. Her. Little tiger, did you ask your girlfriend for help? Wonton Seller followed with an I knew it emoji. So it's a girl, no wonder she's so sensitive, Unparalleled Dragon King suddenly realized. Girlfriend? Lu Cheng quickly denied, no, it's another friend. Another female friend? Tiger, not bad, bringing another female friend on a trip. Okamoto's fan said in a rather flirtatious tone. You're thinking too much. There are other friends too, Lu Cheng emphasized. Okamoto's fan said with an angry smile emoji, you don't have to explain this, just tell me if she's pretty. If she's pretty, I don't mind being scolded by her. She's okay, Lu Qing replied hesitantly. The conversation just now made him a little scared, not because he was afraid of anything, but because he had learned from those long-distance relationships that once two people were too far apart, their trust and sense of security would become fragile, and they couldn't withstand suspicion again and again. Therefore, if they wanted to go on steadily, both parties had to understand the word, avoid suspicion. Even if they had a clear conscience, they had to consider the possibility that they would do something untoward. Taking the initiative to stay away from things that would arouse their partner's suspicion and put them in a bad mood, so as to avoid arousing suspicion and causing trouble. A person's freedom is always relative, especially when you have a partner. Should I tell Ku about this? If I don't tell her, she probably won't know, and this matter will pass quietly, but if she finds out about this on a whim, even if she doesn't say it, she should have some thoughts in her mind. Thoughts churning, Lu Qing quickly made a decision. He switched to the QQ interface and told Yen Zhika about his loss to Vagar. Yen Zhika replied with a hug emoji. I saw some of it just now, and I thought you could win. Not bad, when you transform, you will definitely win. She comforted her Cheng in this way. After a round of tender and encouraging words, Lu Qing took the initiative to say, F***ck, Peng Liyun got me into trouble. After sending this message, he glanced at Peng Liyun and said in his heart, Comrade Liyun, the organization has decided, you'll take the blame. What's wrong with him? Yen Zhika replied with an emoji of a cat hugging a salted fish. Didn't Unparalleled Dragon King and the rest ask me to take photos for the live broadcast? Before I went to the competition, I asked for Peng Liyun's help, but he didn't expect him to be so irresponsible and threw the responsibility to Renli. In the end, Renli quarreled with someone in the live broadcast thread, and I almost couldn't explain. Lu Qing replied. Pfft. They're so unreliable. Renli is usually so quiet, why would she quarrel with someone? Yen Zhika replied with an emoji of, I'm so scared that I dropped my dried fish. As Lu Cheng's competition was early today, it wasn't time for her class yet. She opened the forum and browsed through the live broadcast thread, and unconsciously bit her lip. I heard from Peng Liyun and Chaoyang that Renli is especially good at insulting people online. Lu Qing threw the blame to her. Quite a contrast. I feel a little cute. Covering mouth and laughing expression, Yen Zhika replied. What kind of person is Renli normally? This question made Lu Qing feel a lot of pressure. He pondered for a while and organized his words. She's quite muddle-headed, but very confident in everything. Because she's too bad with directions, the team leader has been following her, and didn't have much contact with us. I see. She's quite different from what I imagined her to be. Scratching chin with hand and rolling eyes expression, Yen Zhika replied. She exhaled, shook her head and laughed softly. She changed the topic and didn't continue to pester him. At this time, she received another message from Huang Shiwen, her classmate who went abroad with her. Let's get together tonight. There's a ball at Tom's house. Many of our fellow villagers will come, and there will be famous seniors and seniors from our school. Yen Zhika didn't hesitate and replied directly, I don't really like crowded places. Seriously, what's the point of staying at home all the time? You don't even know a single classmate, how are you going to integrate into the class? You can't always be a loner, you'll be isolated. If anything happens in the future, you won't be able to find anyone to help you. Dress up properly, come and relax, and adjust your mood. Huang Shiwen persuaded. I don't think there's any meaning in having a good relationship with my classmates. After Yen Zhika typed this sentence, she felt that it was too harsh, so she deleted and rewrote it. After she was done, she read it again and felt that her words were too soft, and her attitude wasn't clear and firm enough. So she deleted it again and typed again, I'm indeed a very boring person, I hate crowds and it's boring. But I like it very much. It allows me to study in peace. Don't inform me of similar gatherings in the future. I'm really not interested. After reading it a few times and making some changes, she clicked send and felt relaxed. Really, my good intentions are taken for granted. Huang Shiwen looked at the message and put down her phone angrily. She said to the two guys in front of her, "She's not coming. She's a very boring and gloomy person. Yes, the kind of old lady who doesn't know how to smile." In the Xinxiang Stadium, Peng Liyun noticed that Lu Cheng was looking at him. He touched his cheek doubtfully and said, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Lu Cheng replied with a smile. "Comrade Liyun, you're a good scapegoat." Peng Liyun frowned slightly and shook his head. He decided not to continue the topic with this weird guy. At this moment, a match had ended. It was his turn to fight the seated player, Li Shaokong. Chapter 461. Li Shaokong was about 1.6 meters tall, skinny, and had dark skin. He had the looks of a typical Southern young person, except that he looked slightly older, not like he was in his early 20s. His eyes were dark and deep, as if they could drown in a person's heart. He had a strong psychic supernatural ability that allowed him to hypnotize his opponent during a match, disrupting his opponent's emotions and triggering fear and other negative feelings. He could achieve an effect similar to the army formula or the lion's roar. He didn't even need to visualize to complement it. He was a very dangerous fighter, as evidenced by the fact that he was the 8th seed of the tournament. After watching Peng Liyun leave for the arena, and Chaoyang took off his earphones and looked at Lu Cheng with interest. "How do you think he will fight?" Lu Cheng pondered for a moment and said, "Psychic supernatural abilities are troublesome. If I were him, I would definitely use a move like thunder from a clear sky, cloudless thunder blade, at the start of the match. Shock followed by damage and paralysis." Ha, if I hadn't expected it, Li Shaokong wouldn't have been able to effectively avoid it. Then, without giving him a chance to use his psychic supernatural ability, I would have attacked and completely suppressed him. With Peng Liyun's strength, I would have finished the match in less than 10 seconds. That is indeed the best way to fight. And Chaoyang nodded in agreement. Then, as if recalling the past, he shook his head and laughed bitterly. But that wouldn't be Peng Liyun. He would definitely want to see the wonders of a combination of psychic supernatural ability and Southern Zhang's assassin-style martial arts. Hearing this, Lu Cheng suddenly remembered his first official fight with Peng Liyun. He sighed empathetically and said, "Yes, that is what Peng Liyun would do." As he spoke, he turned to look at and Chaoyang. Both of them laughed in unison. They were both people who had been tortured by the big devil. "That can't be." Renli heard their discussion and rebutted with uncertainty. "My impression of Peng Liyun had always been that he would give it his all." Lu Cheng-en and Chaoyang looked at each other again and replied in unison, "You don't understand. Peng Liyun was not an evenly matched opponent. Although he seemed to be going all out, he obviously left some leeway in the choice of moves and changes of rhythm to fully mobilize the enemy, allowing him to play to his heart's content and satisfy his martial arts fanatic mentality." At this moment, Peng Liyun and Li Shaokong stepped into the arena and stood opposite each other. The referee waited for a while, then raised his right hand. "Begin." As his voice echoed, Peng Liyun's waist sank and swung, and he floated out in the obvious shaking of the arena. In an instant, the distance between the two sides was shortened. Flash strike. As expected. Lu Cheng-en and Chaoyang looked at each other, sighing and amused at the same time. As expected, Peng Liyun did not use a move like thunder from a clear sky, cloudless thunder blade, at the beginning of the match. Boldness comes from skill. Compared to before the metamorphosis, the biggest difference between Peng Liyun now was that when the dance stage erupted, every move of his was imbued with the heavenly punishment force. Between his fists and feet, purple lightning curled up and sizzled, like a cluster of dragons. Even if Li Shaokong tried his best to counter, it was as if he was caught in waves of paralysis, each higher than the last, and it was very difficult for him to defend. During this process, he kept looking for openings to influence his opponent with his mental supernatural ability in an attempt to change the situation. However, every time he created an opportunity and saw hope, Peng Liyun would timely neutralize it before it succeeded. Time ticked by. Li Shaokong fully demonstrated his strengths and utilized his mental supernatural ability to the fullest. He felt that if it were any other situation or opponent, he would be able to make his opponent kneel down and admit defeat. However, the Chinese martial artist before him seemed to be at ease. His performance was unfathomable, as though no matter how hard he tried, he could neutralize it with ease. The more Li Shaokong fought, the more desperate he felt. He began to take risks, trying to force his opponent to his limits. However, the risks failed quickly, and the plan was quickly ruined. The referee announced the results of the match. Peng Liyun wins. Very strong. At the Japanese representative's side, Muko Yamashita, who was focused on the center arena, suddenly heard a female voice exclaim. He turned his head and saw Kori Karasawa, who had a solemn expression on her face. After that, Renli easily defeated her opponent, while An Chaoyang defeated his opponent with a clear advantage. The second round of the double elimination tournament was coming to an end. After tonight's matches, a total of 13 contestants had accumulated 2 losses and were eliminated. There were 23 contestants left vying for the final 16 spots. Only the top 16 contestants would get the prize money. The next morning, Lu Qing woke up on time. After a short chat with Yan Zhika, he eagerly began the day's training. He wanted to grasp the essence and charm of the Emperor Yan diagram as soon as possible and upgrade his Zhurong force in the shortest time possible. Holding the diagram, he immersed his mind and carefully comprehended it. However, the heavy suction and explosive flames interfered with his mind, causing his senses to be intermittent. He couldn't grasp the occasional flash of inspiration. Compared to the past few days, his understanding of the Emperor Yan diagram had improved a lot, but he was still lacking a little. Sensing the increasing impatience in his heart, Lu Qing retracted his mind and vision. He exhaled and visualized the ice mirror to calm his emotions. After another round of punching, he waited until his mind and body were calm before he stopped. He thought seriously for a while and decided to try to comprehend by analogy. This time, he didn't look at the Emperor Yan diagram. Instead, he adjusted the state of his muscles, fascia, and organs according to the prairie fire diagram. Then, he visualized the fire god Zhurong, who had the head of a beast and the body of a human standing on a red dragon. This allowed him to control the surging flames in his body. Since the Zhurong force could be upgraded to the Emperor Yan force, he should be able to gain some insight from this aspect as a guide. Based on his understanding of the Emperor Yan diagram, Lu Qing carefully controlled the Zhurong force and merged them together strand by strand. He pinched them together tightly in order to achieve maximum changes. After an unknown period of time, when the 2 streams of Zhurong power, which had become much denser than before, were slowly compressed by Ji Hao and squeezed into a ball, a strong suction force suddenly burst out from the core of the 2 streams of Zhurong power, which made the outer layer of the 2 streams of Zhurong power quickly condense inwards. Lu Cheng's body trembled. The fire god Zhurong form in his mind almost collapsed. He controlled it with great difficulty and hurriedly released the mutated fire force. Boom! Flames rose in front of him. Smoke expanded and filled the air, scaring a few pedestrians in the distance into covering their heads and scurrying away, thinking that they were being attacked by terrorists. Seems like I'm getting some insight. Lu Qing couldn't hide his joy at the sight. A few minutes later, he heard the sirens of police cars and saw a squad of military police rushing in front of him. For a moment, he was dumbfounded. After negotiating with the leader, Zhong Ningtao, and a call from the embassy, the military police gave Lu Qing a few reminders before finally retreating from the scene. Ahem. Be careful when you practice martial arts. After all, you're overseas. You have to be mindful of the consequences, Zhong Ningtao reminded him, both physically and mentally exhausted. He thought that Renli was the only troublesome one. He didn't expect that the most reliable and stable Lu Qing would also almost cause trouble. None of them are easy to deal with. Under the gazes of Peng Liyun, Renli, and An Chaoyang, who couldn't help but laugh, Lu Qing gave them a promise. He turned around and found a more secluded place. Using the little insight he had from before, he started to observe and understand the Emperor Yen diagram again. The dust accumulated and swirled into a vortex. When it reached a limit, it suddenly collapsed, squeezing out heat from the heaviness, igniting itself and spewing out flames that illuminated the darkness. Even with a guide, Lu Qing still experienced failure after failure before he barely grasped the subtle charm. The flames were controlled and turned into a crown and robe. In his mind, a solemn and dignified Emperor Yen statue was faintly formed. However, just as it was about to become clear, it suddenly collapsed. Lu Qing panted heavily. He wasn't annoyed but happy. Although he had failed just now, it meant that he really did have some insight. He had pushed open the door and found the right path. Now, it was just a matter of patience. This was due to the catalysis of the change in method and also the accumulation of gains over time. Phew! He almost shouted out loud. He quickly took out his phone and reported the good news to his wife. I have some idea of the Emperor Yen force. I was almost arrested by the Xinjiang police because of this. Pfft, is it because you were too happy and shouted too loudly that you scared the little kids? Yen Jika happened to be in between classes. She sent a kissing from afar emoji in surprise and delight. Brother Cheng, you're the best. Are you praising me for making a breakthrough in the Emperor Yen force or for scaring the little kids? Lu Qing snickered happily. Understand the spirit of your coach. Yen Jika's dimples appeared at the corner of her mouth. She asked about the details, happy that Lu Qing had comprehended the Emperor Yen diagram and happy that he had accidentally attracted the police. For the rest of the day, Lu Qing didn't practice with Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chaoyang. Using the excuse that he was about to make a breakthrough, he neglected sleep and forgot to eat to deeply understand the Emperor Yen diagram. When he was tired and resting, he chatted with Ku to ease his mood. At 3 in the afternoon, he sat cross-legged and finally outlined a solemn, dignified and scorching Emperor Yen statue in his mind. The flow of fire in his body surged, condensed and gradually stabilized. Lu Qing opened his eyes and smiled tiredly. He picked up his phone and sent a message to Yen Jika. I did it. He had mastered the Emperor Yen diagram. The next step would be the sublimation process. It wouldn't take long. Only then did he feel sleepy. He hurriedly added to the girl, Ku, I'll send you a message. If I don't hear from you when you wake up, call me and wake me up. He felt that with his current condition, he might not be able to wake up on time. If he missed the competition because he overslept and was disqualified, that would be a huge mistake. It was currently midnight in America. After sending the message, Lu Qing fell asleep immediately. His sleep was filled with dreams. It was dark and groggy. Suddenly, he heard knocking on the door. He struggled out of his drowsiness and woke up. He picked up his phone and saw that it wasn't even 6 o'clock. Ko obviously hadn't woken up yet. Shaking his head, he walked to the door in his wrinkled clothes and opened it. Outside, Peng Liyun had one hand in his pocket. He didn't seem to be in a hurry. He smiled and said, the leader asked me to call you. We'll be gathering in 10 minutes. Okay. Lu Qing was still in a daze after waking up. Peng Liyun smiled and said, you're about to transform, aren't you? Yeah, you can try breaking through underwater. The results are pretty good. Thank you. Lu Qing smiled. He wouldn't tell him that his master had already warned him. After sending Peng Liyun off, he walked into the bathroom. He splashed his face with cold water and combed his hair. He felt his tiredness disappear completely and he felt refreshed. With a smile on his face, Lu Qing took out his phone and sent a message to Yen Jika. I'm awake. I feel like I'm full of energy. After clicking send, he looked at himself in the mirror in high spirits and muttered silently, the third round of the competition, here I come. Chapter 462. After changing his clothes, Lu Qing was about to go out when he heard a special notification from his phone. He picked it up and saw a message from Yenjika. Yenjika sent an emoji of a monkey rubbing its eyes in pajamas. I set the alarm at this time, but you woke up by yourself. You woke up. Lu Cheng broke into laughter and replied honestly. The leader asked Peng Liyun to knock on the door and wake me up. Hey, Ku, why did you set the alarm now? Shouldn't you be sleeping soundly when I sent the message? I woke up in the middle of the night and looked at my phone in a daze. I also set the alarm. Yenjika sent an emoji of a monkey brushing its teeth. Come, let's interview you. Lu Cheng, what do you want to say about finally visualizing the statue of Emperor Yen? Are you excited? Excited? What's your biggest feeling? Passing the microphone. Lu Cheng examined himself and rubbed his discontented tummy. Laughing to tears expression, he said, my biggest feeling is hunger, I'm not joking. I didn't even eat breakfast or lunch. Pfft. Yenjika laughed out loud and rolled on the bed. She sent an emoji of disdain, it's all your fault. I said I'd go back to sleep and make up for an hour of sleep. Now I'm completely awake from laughing. Without waiting for Lu Cheng to reply, she sent another emoji of a pitiful face, I can only wake up early to train. Ha, that's good. Martial arts can't be neglected. The body is the capital of revolution. Lu Cheng said casually. What he wanted to say was that only when the body was healthy, the spirit would be full, and it would be more conducive to learning. After a dozen seconds, Yenjika sent an emoji of knocking on the head. You're so dirty. Dirty? Lu Cheng was stunned for a moment. He didn't understand what Yenjika was thinking. After thinking for a while, he understood and sent an emoji of a snicker. Ku, what are you thinking? What I mean is that the body is the capital of learning. Well, you're not wrong to understand it that way. Hee hee. Hee hee your head. You're the one who led me astray. Yes, you must have deliberately misled me. Yenjika typed on the keyboard with a red face. Humph, tell me, what do you want to eat now? I'll help you find the pictures right away. I don't hold grudges overnight. I want to eat our Kuz San Xian. Lu Cheng changed his mind and his mood softened. Yenjika pursed her lips and looked away. She looked to the side and forgot what she had been thinking before. She said, then bring a cookbook when you come over in September. We can cook something together. Yes, yes. I promised to complete the task assigned by Coach Yen. Lu Cheng replied. They chatted for a while. After Yenjika complimented him generously, Lu Cheng took his belongings and left the room. He arrived at the lobby on time to meet with his teammates. Yenjika, who was in America, put down her phone and got out of bed quickly. She pushed open the door and headed for the bathroom to wash up. She had just turned on the light when she suddenly sensed something. Turning her head, she found her mother, Ji Mingyu, standing at the door of her room with her arms crossed, quietly looking at her. Mom, why are you up so early? Yenjika blurted out. Ji Mingyu chuckled, her posture unchanged. I was woken up by your alarm clock. Why did you wake up an hour earlier today? What did that brat Lu Cheng do this time? Why did he have to make you wake up early? Yenjika's eyes suddenly lit up and sparkled. She raised her chin and said honestly, yes. Cheng has mastered Emperor Yen force. It's going to transform soon. In the lobby, Lu Cheng and then Chaoyang, who arrived first, saw Peng Liyun walking in leisurely and Renli under the escort of the team leader. Zhong Ningtao was about to say something when he heard a loud rumbling sound. It sounded like someone's stomach was wriggling violently in protest. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone present had good hearing. Renli, Peng Liyun and Chaoyang immediately looked at Lu Cheng. Before Lu Cheng could open his mouth and control himself, his stomach started growling again. I'm a little hungry, he said shamelessly with a red face. Oh no, I've made a fool of myself in front of the four of them. I can't build a reliable image anymore. Ha, let's go then. I found a good Chinese restaurant. Zhong Ningtao said with a smile. Peng Liyun looked at Lu Cheng and smiled at and Chaoyang. I thought of a song. Me too. And Chaoyang downloaded the song quickly and played it through his headphones. So hungry, so hungry, so hungry, I'm really hungry. Amidst the music, he looked at Lu Cheng with a smile and asked, do you like it? Not at all. Lu Cheng put on a forced smile and raised his right hand. He introduced solemnly, look at my fist, it's already clenched. And Chaoyang's personality was more feminine. Who knew when he would secretly trick someone? He was the most two-faced. Ha! Everyone burst into laughter. During this period of time, everyone had become more and more familiar with each other. During dinner, they restrained themselves and waited until Lu Cheng was half full before letting loose. Although the food in the Chinese restaurant wasn't delicious, they still ate to their heart's content since they hadn't eaten Chinese food for many days. However, they were worried about the competition at night, so they had to make sure their bodies were in top condition. At 7:10 p.m., Lu Cheng and the rest arrived at the Xinxiang Stadium. Along the way, they witnessed a street fight and watched with interest for 5 minutes. At this time, the audience had already gathered. The third round of drawing lots ceremony would begin in less than 20 minutes. Now that there were only 23 contestants left, the probability of drawing a strong opponent was obviously higher. Of course, there would be some lucky ones who would get a bye and watch the fights with a smile. In Lu Cheng's fan forum, Eternal Nightfall, Yan Shaoling was passionately pasting the wishing post. As long as Lu Cheng doesn't draw an inhuman in this round, I'll wake up on time from now until school reopens. She copied the content and prayed silently with Brahman, all good names are taken by dogs, and the rest. If Lu Cheng lost another round, he would be eliminated. Stupid Eternal Nightfall, why wake up on time and not early? Asked Unparalleled Dragon King, after observing for a while. Yan Shaoling sent a shocked emoji and said, wake up on time means that you have to wake up at 12 noon. 12 noon? Do you still need to make a wish? God will strike you to death. No, you're too short and won't be an obvious target, replied Unparalleled Dragon King, with a shocked emoji. This is summer vacation, do you understand? Summer vacation. Uncle, you can't understand the state of a student during summer vacation. Although I set a rule for myself to wake up at noon, I've been sleeping when the sun rises and waking up at 4 or 5 p.m. Replied Yan Shaoling. Damn, so decadent. Replied Unparalleled Dragon King, with a sweaty emoji. Yan Shaoling replied with a dejected emoji. It's very decadent, but it's really King satisfying. Little Nightfall, you're becoming more and more like an old hooligan, replied Brahman. She used to be such a soft and cute girl. Ever since she started this forum, she had become an old hand in just a year's time. Lu Cheng chatted with his mother, Qi Fangyin, for a while. After reporting the day's events, he saw Yan Zhika send him a link. Laughing so hard, Shaoling is so funny. Huh? Lu Cheng clicked on the link and entered his own forum. Seeing everyone's wishes, he was touched. At the same time, he couldn't help but laugh at Yan Shaoling's waking up on time. Back in the days, I wasn't even this decadent during the summer vacation after college entrance examinations. At most, I would sleep at 3 p.m. and wake up at 12 p.m. Occasionally, I would stay up all night. He exited the post and switched back to the chat interface. He said to Yan Zhika with a smirk emoji, "Cool, it's almost time to draw lots. Aren't you going to make a wish and pray?" Yan Zhika sent an emoji of a little monster licking ice cream and said, "I'm not worried at all. With my luck shining on you, you definitely won't be able to draw an inhuman. Don't worry," patting on the shoulder earnestly. "Ha, you've learned a little of their chat style," replied Lu Cheng with a chuckle. He turned to look at the guests walking up the ring. After eliminating Peng Liyun, Ren Li, and Chaoyang and myself, as well as Vagar and Sakata, something that I've fought before, there are still 17 choices left. If we don't count the walkover, the probability of getting an inhuman is 4 out of 17, less than a quarter. The probability of getting a seed is 7 out of 17, more than a third, almost half. As he would be eliminated if he lost one more round, he couldn't stay calm. Not long after, he heard his name and couldn't help but straighten his back. After waiting for a few seconds, the guest drew his opponent. Xingxiang, Bako. Bako? Not a seeded player. Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief. This thought came to his mind. However, after thinking carefully about this name, he realized that it wasn't an easy opponent to deal with. Bako was one of the representatives of Xingxiang's martial arts. He also knew sorcery similar to the black magic voodoo, and his battle strength was close to the inhuman level. Based on his standards, he could have been the 7th or 8th seeded player. However, due to the unspoken rule of only having 2 seeded players in each of the 4 countries, due to Waku and Gusai, 6th seeded player, he was unfortunately not selected. He had to fight his way through to enter this round. After the start of this round, his luck wasn't too good. He drew the 1st seeded player, Kaori Karasawa, in the first round and swallowed the bitter taste of defeat. However, he won the second round easily and kept his spot. Now, he was in the same situation as Lu Qing. There was no room for retreat. Luckily, as long as it wasn't an inhuman. Lu Qing nodded without any arrogance or fear. He sent the situation to Yenjika and shared the information in the live stream thread as a Little War reporter. At the Xingxiang representative seat, Bako, with both his hands and wrists wrapped in blood-red bandages, nodded with confidence. Just as Lu Qing lowered his head to look at his phone, and Chaoyang was also drawn. His opponent was quickly confirmed. Nanjing, Banam. 4th seeded Banam. Chapter 463. This luck. And Chaoyang was stunned at first when he heard the result of the draw. Then he shook his head and laughed at himself. He was relatively relaxed and didn't feel much pressure. Instead, he was eager to try. To him, he hadn't lost a single match yet. Even if he lost this match, he wouldn't be eliminated. It would be a great experience to have an intense battle with an inhuman mighty one with different martial arts styles. Just look at Lu Qing from yesterday. After fighting with Vagar, his actual combat skills seemed to have reached a new level, solidifying the weak foundation caused by his rapid advancement. Seeing that and Chaoyang didn't care much about the bad draw, Lu Qing immediately joked, "I think this is retribution for provoking me with the Song of Eating." Under and Chaoyang's amused and angry expression, he explained, seriously, "As you know, I have the supernatural ability to reflect curses and bad luck. This is just the most basic application of it. Those who hurt me, provoke me, or make fun of me will suffer retribution." At this point, he drew a cross in the wrong order on his chest and said solemnly, "Believe in Lu Qing and you will live forever." And Chaoyang was stunned for a few seconds. He couldn't help but laugh. "If you didn't say that last sentence, I would have believed you." As he spoke, he couldn't continue and laughed with Peng Liyun, Renli, and Zhong Ningtao. "You believe me just like that?" Using Little Ming's catchphrase, "With your intelligence, if you were a girl, I could have tricked you into bed twice." Lu Qing secretly mocked him and laughed with everyone else. "You seem to be in a good mood." And Chaoyang calmed down and fixed his half-length artistic hair. He glanced at Lu Qing and said, "Yeah," Lu Qing replied with a smile, feeling good both physically and mentally. He had succeeded in his training and was about to transform. His opponent wasn't a real inhuman mighty one. What was there to be unsatisfied about? At this moment, Yenjika replied to his previous message. Hand under chin, laughing expression, "See. I told you that with my luck shining on you, you wouldn't be able to get an inhuman. Now I'm completely at ease. I won't cheer you on later. I'll lend you my luck." Completely at ease? Completely? Cuckoo, you seem to have exposed something. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. His mood was getting better. At this moment, Peng Liyun was selected. His opponent was a Japanese samurai, neither Kori Karasawa nor Muko Yamashita. Behind him, there were only two groups left. After confirming, there was a lucky girl who got a bye, student Renly. Is it because girls with bad sense of direction tend to have better luck? Lu Qing whispered into An Chaoyang's ear. It's possible. If you're unlucky, you'll really get lost, and Chaoyang replied tactfully. The two of them turned their heads and saw Renly puffing out her cheeks, looking very dissatisfied. What is she unhappy about? And Chaoyang asked in a low voice. Lu Qing thought for a moment and said, maybe he's disappointed that there wasn't a fight. After saying that, the two of them looked at each other and sympathized with the pitiful, vacant lot. In Lu Chang's fan forum, Eternal Nightfall Yan Shaoling tagged Unparalleled Dragon King. Is this Bako powerful? What level? How much worse is he compared to our Lu Cheng? Close to the inhuman stage. Unparalleled Dragon King replied honestly, but most of his strength is in Nanyang sorcery. The most powerful curse type is coincidentally countered by Lu Cheng. It's fine if he doesn't use it, but if he does, he'll just have to wait for a comedy. So, in conclusion, he's slightly weaker than Lu Cheng. Based on Lu Cheng's outstanding performance on the spot, Bako doesn't have a high chance of winning. Our wishes are still very effective. Dancing in circles expression, Yan Shaoling said. Okamoto's fan appeared and said, then you'll have to start waking up on time. Yan Shaoling immediately went down on her knees and shivered. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on you. Patting shoulder expression, replied Brahman. When the duel was about to start, at the Xinjiang representative seat, the sallow skinny Theravada ascetic monk Waku walked up to Bako and said with perfect articulation, you have to be careful of his supernatural ability to reflect curses. Bako adjusted the blood-red bandages on his hands and replied with a hoarse voice, I've seen his information before. As a famous boxer in Xinjiang, he looked skinny. In fact, every muscle on his body seemed to be made of copper and iron, containing explosive strength. His eyebrows were short and thick, and the edges were folded. He looked extremely fierce. After answering the reminder and adjusting the bandages, Bako stood up slowly, extended his hands and spread them in front of Waku. He said confidently, my sorcery isn't limited to curses. As he spoke, there seemed to be many tiny life forms under his blood-red bandages. They were densely packed and wriggling, making one's heart palpitate. Bam! Cracking his knuckles, Bako clenched his fist tightly. He took a step forward, past Waku, and walked towards the arena. Lu Cheng was already waiting at the edge of the arena. When other people's duels ended, he couldn't wait to enter the arena and stand at his position. His mood was as good as before. For the first time, he didn't unleash his aura and visualize the army formula to exert pressure on Bako, who was walking towards him slowly. He was rather relaxed and at ease. Yes, once the Emperor Yen statue was formed, it meant that the Zhurong force would be upgraded very soon. He would officially cross the threshold and begin to transform, becoming an inhuman. This was extremely symbolic. It was similar to achieving the Dan stage through force concentration. It meant that he could truly be called a mighty one and belong to the upper echelons of the martial arts world. At this stage, even if he lost the competition and didn't get the prize money, Wu Qinggue would increase his endorsement fees according to the contract when he returned to China. Furthermore, the reward for winning the national championship would also be settled together. This was the worst-case scenario. However, in reality, Bako wasn't an inhuman. He had a high chance of winning. He would still value him, but he wouldn't feel too much pressure and his mood wouldn't be affected. Moreover, the flight to America had been successfully booked. Ke had specially woken up early today to wake him up. His mother had said that the new house they bought had increased by 50,000 yuan in just a few months. His relationship with his teammates was getting better. Everything in the world seemed so perfect. Lu Qing thought happily. He didn't even waste the waiting time and took the time to visualize. In his mind, he outlined the heavy, majestic, scorching and terrifying Emperor Yen statue. With this, he guided the flame force in his body to slowly condense and transform. This was the process of upgrading Zhurong force to Emperor Yen force. Actually, even without this upgrade, he, who had grasped the Emperor Yen diagram, could use the Emperor Yen force through a series of steps and visualizations. However, as he had to compress it at the last minute and visualize it for a few seconds, it was almost useless in actual combat. When the flame force corresponded to the upgrade, he could save those few seconds and allow the Emperor Yen force to be used in actual combat. If his root pulp mutated and his body transformed, he wouldn't even need a series of steps. He could just visualize the Emperor force. Wisps of flames fused and streaks of red turned white. Lu Cheng enjoyed the changes in his body and gradually accumulated a streak of Emperor Yen force. With this as the core, he triggered others and created more. At this moment, Bako walked up to the arena. He saw the young man standing casually in front of him and realized that he was smiling. He didn't show any fighting spirit and was relaxed both physically and mentally. Too arrogant, too careless. Bako thought as the fighting spirit in his eyes burned brighter. At this moment, Lu Cheng miraculously felt no pressure. He felt that he had the lively mind described in Xianxia novels. As a result, his flame force became lively. He didn't care about his opponent's performance. He smiled at Bako and bowed. The referee raised his right hand and shouted in a deep and loud voice, "Begin." Experiencing the miraculous feeling, Lu Cheng, who was relaxed physically and mentally, took a step forward with his left leg. His mind naturally changed his visualization and the attainment formula appeared. In the deep ancient sound, he covered more than 10 meters with a single stride. With a swoosh, he was right in front of Bako. Swinging his right arm, his fist mixed with the forward momentum of his body and punched out with a bang. It was accompanied by the violent flame force that was caused by the disappearance of the Emperor Yen statue midway. Bako was shocked. Seeing that he couldn't dodge in time, he quickly lowered his center of gravity and put his hands in front of him to block. Lu Cheng's fist was like lightning. It was dyed with a layer of blazing white as it hit his hand. Boom! In the midst of the explosion, waves of fire rolled and billowed. Strong winds overflowed in all directions. Bakashin could not help but take a step back. To his astonishment, he saw that the blood-colored bandage on his hand was either charred black or burning. Tiny things fell off and turned into dust along with the wind. Bako's pupils contracted. When did Lu Cheng's flame force become so powerful? P.S. Only one more chapter to go. Continue tomorrow. Chapter 464. On the spectator's stand, and Chaoyang was holding Lu Cheng's phone. According to his instructions, he would occasionally take a picture and post it on the live stream post. He would also add a sentence of commentary to describe the progress for Unparalleled Dragon King, Eternal Nightfall and the rest who couldn't see the match. Sob sob sob, little tiger, you are such a good person. Waving handkerchief expression, said Wonton Seller. Moving heaven and earth. Setting off fireworks expression, said Brahman. Looking at their excited praises, and Chaoyang curled his lips and couldn't help but criticize silently, I am the one who does good deeds without leaving my name. If Lu Cheng didn't say in private that I was the most reliable one among the few here, I wouldn't have put in so much effort. Snap. He took a picture of the arena and posted it with a sentence, Lu Cheng looks very relaxed while waiting. Snap. Snap. And Chaoyang found it interesting to post pictures again and again. Bako looks like he has a deep grudge. Lu Cheng looks very relaxed. It feels like he is at a temple fair and not about to fight. As he was commenting, he suddenly paused for a while. After a while, he pressed the shutter and typed a sentence of more than 20 words. Lu Cheng's moves are so smooth. His flame force is also beyond my expectations. In the picture, waves of fire were rolling and spreading outwards as if there was a real explosion. At this moment, Not only did Bako lose most of his ability to use his evil arts, both of his arms were trembling and charred. Due to forcefully blocking the explosion of the terrifying flame force, he had suffered a certain amount of damage and showed obvious soreness. In his contracted pupils, he saw Lu Qing raising both of his hands and forming a seal. He was about to exhale and make a sound. Not good. Bako thought to himself. In a split second, he made a decision. His body suddenly squatted down and avoided the cutting edge in front of him. Immediately after, he pressed both of his hands on the ground and straightened his back. His right leg swept out towards Lu Cheng's ankle, forcing him to dodge and not be distracted to use the army formula. This was the Chinese Tian Tang kick that incorporated the characteristics of Xingxiang's martial arts. If Lu Cheng were to use this move instead of relying on force concentration, he would not be able to exert force with both hands. Although the strength of his legs would be ferocious, it would not be considered swift and fierce. However, Xingxiang's martial arts placed a lot of emphasis on kicking and thrusting techniques. The entire leg would be trained to the point where it was akin to metal. A ground kick could break an iron pillar, not to mention the fragile ankle. Amidst the loud noise, Bako predicted that Lu Cheng would jump to avoid his sweeping leg. Both of his arms suddenly bent and straightened, causing his body to jump up strangely and pounce towards the enemy in midair. Pa! He smashed his elbows diagonally and pushed his knees upwards, attacking continuously with the force of breaking gold and shattering iron. In the dangerous situation, Bako fully displayed his strength and displayed the elegance of a country's boxing master, forcefully turning the tables around. But at this moment, he saw Lu Cheng jump up and down, but the seals he formed with his hands were not messed up in the slightest, and the solemn and dignified expression on his face did not change at all. He was completely calm and unruffled, as if he was watching children play. *T. As Bako's thoughts turned, he heard a low roar in his ears. Army! The ancient voice reverberated and Bako's mind buzzed. It was as if he was drowned by the aura of blood and evil from thousands of people, causing his evil arts to fail and causing a terrifying backlash. He could only feel numerous ferocious faces pulling at his feet with endless hatred, wanting to drag him down into the boundless hell. No, no, no. He kept screaming in his heart and tried his best to resist, but he could not break free from the feeling of fear. After Lu Cheng succeeded in using the army formula, as his body fell, his right arm dropped rapidly and his wrist hooked, releasing a ray of crystal-clear cold light towards the enemy in midair who was staring blankly in midair. The tight connection and the chain of moves, compared to before the battle with Vagar, was indeed a step up. The 26th move of the Ice Sect, Ice Burning, had been modified. On the other side, Bako saw that he was about to fall into hell. Suddenly, he felt pain in his internal organs, as if something was wriggling there, overturning the seas and rivers. Using this stimulation, he suddenly woke up and broke free from the influence of the army formula. At the crucial moment, he used the body protection technique. However, just as Bako walked out of the fear of losing his courage, he saw a ball of cold light in front of him. With a smack, it stuck to his face, igniting a cold flame that burned quietly. Poof! Bako's head tilted back and his thoughts were almost interrupted. If it wasn't for his strong body, he would have fainted. In the bone-piercing cold and stiffness, he wanted to roar but was slow and powerless. He knew that something was wrong and hurriedly unsealed the danger in his body the moment his feet touched the ground. Bam bam bam. His bones and tendons exploded in that instant. Something seemed to be wriggling and expanding in every muscle, breaking through the ice that covered his face. His body turned from thin to ridiculously strong and he was half a head taller than before. Bam! In the violent shaking of the arena, Bako stepped forward and threw a punch, creating a strong wind that could blow a child away. Good move. Lu Cheng, who had already visualized and formed a hand gesture, pointed at himself and shouted in his heart. He wriggled his abdomen and pulled at his throat, fighting. In the deep and heavy voice that pierced through the clouds, Lu Cheng's muscles were filled with blood. He suddenly pushed his feet inward, twisted his knees and spasmed his back. Bam! He also grew taller. In the shattering sound, he pulled back his right arm and threw a quick punch like an arrow, colliding head-on with Bako's fist that was covered in tattered charred bandages. Boom! This time, it wasn't a dull sound but a deafening explosion. Both of them shook at the same time. Bako, who was still suffering from the ice and damage, was slower by half a beat. He saw Lu Qing retracting his qi, blood, spirit, force and rebounding force and gathering them at his lower abdomen, standing firmly on the ground. Bam! The Dan qi in Lu Cheng's body gushed out like an erupting volcano. His left leg expanded and with a spring of his knee, he kicked out first towards Bako. At such a distance and with such speed of attack, Bako couldn't dodge in time. He forcefully stimulated his qi and blood and activated his body's potential. He followed up with a kick and braced his leg to block. Bam! With a dull sound, Bako, who had lost the initiative and was slightly inferior, bounced back with his leg. His body swayed forward and looked like he was about to fall. Lu Qing jumped half a step. His left arm was covered in crystal-clear frost. He raised it up and clenched his right fist, punching out. The friction with the air at high speed ignited a layer of flames. Zhu Rong Force, Fiery Fist. Boom! Bako didn't have a chance to counterattack. He could only lower his arm and cross his arms to block. He was embarrassed by the impact of the fist, the shockwave of the explosion and the rising flames. This wasn't the end. Lu Qing lowered his left arm and grabbed onto Bako's shoulder, pulling him towards himself. He then used the force to turn his body sideways and raised his right arm, striking out with his elbow at lightning speed. Bam! Bako forcefully raised his arm to block but was bounced back and hit his chest. He felt stuffy and looked like he was about to vomit blood. Lu Qing raised his leg again and accurately kicked the side of his opponent's knee without much strength. The kick made Bako, who was flustered, lose his center of gravity. Bam! Lu Qing twisted his waist and his other leg followed closely behind the wheel. He straightened his leg like a battle axe, strong and tough. He sent Bako flying backwards in an instant. Taking a step forward, he didn't give Bako a chance to use his evil arts to struggle. He visualized the crystal-clear and dreamy ice spirit holy light in his mind. Amidst the rumbling of the thunderclouds, he straightened his back and punched upwards as though he was about to fly. Severe warning. Bam! Bako pressed his hands down and barely managed to block it. However, his vision suddenly turned black and he seemed to have lost his mind. Thump! He turned into a stone and fell heavily on the ground. He fell to the side of Lu Qing, who retreated in time. His throat was pointed at the tip. The expression of the referee from Xinjiang changed slightly. He sighed to himself, raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Lu Qing wins." Until now, Bako, who had suffered multiple blows, had yet to recover from the freezing of his thoughts. Snap! And Chaoyang recorded this scene and switched to the live post, thinking about what kind of commentary he should add. In the post, Eternal Nightfall, Yan Shaoling was anxiously urging, and then? What happened after Lu Cheng's fire force exceeded expectations? Schrodinger's tiger, wake up quickly. They should have exchanged a few moves already. What's the situation now? Grabbing and shaking expression, Brahman said. And Chaoyang was stunned for a moment. His hands quickly typed and sent out the picture, and then Lu Qing won. After a short silence, the people in the forum expressed their feelings one after another. F***CK. I really want to use the 3 consecutive strikes of quality. Is the other side made of paper? What happened to being close to the inhuman stage? My mom asked me why I was kneeling to look at the forum. I want to watch a comedy. And Chaoyang thought seriously and explained, Bako didn't dare to use his evil arts on Lu Qing and was caught off guard by his explosive fire force at the start of the match. He lost the medium to use other evil arts and his overall strength dropped a lot. He is no longer close to the inhuman stage. Unparalleled Dragon King sent an ellipsis and said, like I said, between the inhuman stage and the sixth pin stage, there should be an additional barrier named Lu Cheng. Road to the arena added, I feel like the other side has no strength to fight back. You guys won't say that in a few days. And Chaoyang resisted the urge to reply and said silently. In a few days, Lu Cheng will most likely start to transform. P.S. Today is the third time, please recommend it. Chapter 465. When the staff went up the stage and tried to carry Bako to the emergency room, he finally woke up from the long darkness. He felt his body shivering from the cold and saw Lu Cheng, who was waiting for the post-match greeting. Subconsciously, Bako's body shrunk back, and his ferocious facial features suddenly tightened. He immediately suppressed his sudden instinctive reaction and stood up, forcing himself to salute. This was the worst loss he had ever suffered against an opponent of the same level. It could be said that he didn't even have the strength to retaliate. He originally thought that he had already done his best at this level and was close to Waku and the rest. The other opponents could only rely on their exceptional performance or wait for their own mistakes to have a chance of winning. Lu Cheng was strong, but he wouldn't be much better than them. Who knew that he was simply a monster that couldn't be measured using normal logic? If it was a real battle without a referee, that light kick from him to the side of his knee would have been enough to break his leg. Xinxiang's martial arts made one's legs and elbows as hard as metal. Before the root pulp mutated, it couldn't be compared to real steel. Under the situation where one couldn't use force to resist, even steel would be broken by Lu Cheng's kick within a certain limit, not to mention the side of a human's knee. Lu Cheng knew that Bako wasn't seriously injured, so he waited patiently. Seeing him stand up and salute, he didn't take another look and turned to walk towards the stone steps. Bako watched silently until his opponent was far away. Only then did he bear with the cold that had not completely dissipated and limped down the arena. At the Xinxiang representative seat, the sixth-seated Gusai had stood up and walked to Waku's side. Looking towards the arena, he sighed deeply. So strong, if it were him, he would have to fight hard for a long time to win against Bako. If he wasn't careful, he might even lose. Gusai was also a monk, but he was fat, like a mountain of meat. His skin was faintly glowing with a dark gold color, forming a stark contrast with the sallow and skinny Waku. Waku was also looking at the arena. His deep eyes reflected the silhouettes as he muttered to himself, and he's getting stronger with each match. In other words, he was getting stronger day by day, and it was visible to the naked eye. At the Miluo country's representative seat, the tall and sturdy Vagar had changed into a red general uniform. He was still wearing his big brimmed hat and was sitting on the highest level, quietly watching the fight in the field. He was like a sculpture that displayed the beauty of strength. It was only during the process of Lu Cheng defeating Bako that his eyes under the shadow of the brim of his hat began to shine with a silver light. Over at the Japanese delegation, Kaori Karasawa gently bit her lower lip and nodded. Muko Yamashita stood at the front, neither swaying nor swaying, not saying a word. The day before yesterday, the team leader asked me if I had the confidence to win against Lu Cheng. I answered with certainty without any hesitation. I believed that even if he made a breakthrough, I wouldn't have any problems either. But now, after watching this battle, my heart actually started to waver a little. Of course, it was only a tiny bit. Southern Zheng's representative team was hidden in a secluded corner of the viewing platform. Banam was seated in a yoga pose with his eyes tightly shut, adjusting his state of mind. He wasn't paying attention to any of the matches. As for the battle with Chaoyang, he was not the least bit careless. A careless martial artist wouldn't survive long in Southern Zheng. Lu Cheng walked back to his teammates, high-fived them one by one, and took back his phone from Chaoyang. Unlocking the screen, he scrolled through the live stream post and secretly gave Chaoyang a thumbs up. Well done. You're indeed the most reliable one among us. Chaoyang replied with a smile. He was in a rather good mood, but he quickly collected his emotions and began to seriously prepare for the match with Bantam. Lu Qing switched to the chat interface and reported the result to his leader at home. So easy. I knew it. Yenjika replied immediately. Proud expression, at the same time, she looked down on Banu. That guy is so weak. It shouldn't have been more than a minute, right? No, it should have been more than 10 seconds, replied Lu Qing. Didn't you say that he was stronger than that Sakata from Japan? Why did he lose so quickly instead? Sitting blankly expression, continued Yenjika. Is it because you improved after mastering the Emperor Yen diagram, or is it because his evil arts were countered by you and he panicked? You're done, how do you want me to answer? Snickering expression, replied Lu Qing. I can only say, yes, 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 Coach Yen is right. Seeing this reply, Yenjika, who had just left the dining table, laughed and turned her head. She was completely relaxed. Walking to the dressing table, she tied up her hair and put on the black-rimmed glasses that almost covered half of her face. Another happy day. Today's learning will also be filled with motivation. At this time, it was already 7 in the morning in America. Yenjika quickly packed her bag and said goodbye to Empress Dowager Ji Mingyu. She sat in the car of her full-time bodyguard, Auntie Du, and prepared to go to school. She had lessons at 8. Along the way, she quietly flipped through the teaching materials and books. Occasionally, she would chat with Lu Qing, scroll through the live stream post, and save the pictures of her Qing. At 7:40, the car arrived at the school. Yenjika took her belongings, pushed open the door and left. When she was about to reach the teaching building, she met Huang Shiwen and 2 other seniors who were also from China. She nodded slightly as a greeting. Without stopping, she walked past them and entered the building under the bright sunlight. So arrogant and cold, hearing the sigh of the seniors beside her, Huang Shiwen couldn't help but mutter, I don't know what he's pretending to be. Lu Qing was a popular figure in Songqing University. Yenjika was known to her classmates even earlier than him. Huang Shiwen naturally knew that they were in a relationship. However, in her opinion, after the separation of 2 countries, no matter how strong the relationship was, it was only a matter of time before it faded and broke. Both parties couldn't bear the loneliness. Therefore, she felt that Yenjika and Lu Qing's relationship was about to be declared dead. That was why she actively invited the other party to connect and raise her status in the eyes of her classmates. Humph, Lu Qing is the heavenly son of China. There will definitely be many girls around him. Even if you stay together all the time, you may not be able to control him, let alone a foreign love. At first, he may be able to tolerate it, but as time goes by, he will find someone else. Which man wouldn't cheat under such circumstances? Let's see how you cry when the time comes. Huang Shiwen muttered in a low voice as if she was venting. She shook her head and laughed as she discussed other campus gossip with her senior sisters. Tap, tap, tap. Yenjika walked up 2 flights of stairs with light steps. She walked along the corridor that was bathed in sunlight and approached the classroom. At this moment, she suddenly heard the Caucasian male students beside her discussing something excitedly. That King of 4 Nations tournament was very, very exciting. You watched it too? Oh, that punch from before was so cool. One of the guys stepped out with his left leg and did a sliding punch pose. He was obviously a veteran fan of martial arts. This pose was very familiar to Yenjika, because this was how Lu Qing destroyed most of Bako's evil arts. It was also captured by An Chaoyang. The corner of her mouth curled up. She pursed her pink lips and her steps became lighter and lighter. In the Xinxiang Stadium, the heat waves filled the air. Not long after, the highlight match was about to begin. Waving to his teammates, An Chaoyang took out his phone, digital camera, earphones, wallet and other items and threw them to Lu Qing. Just as he turned around and was about to walk to the arena, he suddenly heard a shout from behind him. An Chaoyang! Huh! An Chaoyang turned around in confusion. He saw Lu Qing smiling and extending his right hand into a fist. It seemed like he wanted to give him a pre-match encouragement. At this moment, and Chaoyang felt like he was back in the Huahai University Martial Arts Club, back in the past 4 years when he participated in the district and national competitions. He laughed out loud, raised his fist and bumped it with Lu Cheng's. Go for it. Lu Qing waved his fist vigorously. With him leading the way, Peng Liyun and Ren Li also came over. They bumped their fists with and Chaoyang and shouted, Go for it. Go for it. And Chaoyang shook his fist lightly as a sign of respect. He turned around again and strode forward. He seemed to have more determination and fighting spirit than before. Where the Japanese representatives were, Moko Yamashita turned his head and looked at a guy beside the leader. His hair was messy and he wore glasses. He was holding a laptop and typing on something crazily. How's the data collection going? Moko Yamashita lowered his voice and asked. The guy with messy hair pushed his glasses up and said, It's just starting to take shape. We're waiting for more competitions to perfect it. However, the most important genetic information has not been collected yet. We can't be compared to China. We have enough mighty ones to study. In this area, we can only think of other ways. Samurais before and after the genetic mutation are the most valuable. China is not vigilant about this. Perhaps they don't think it's important enough to pay attention to. At this point, he paused and looked at Ichii Sakata, who was following the sound of the voice. With their genes, together with those of Vagar and Waku, we can take a huge step forward in our research. Ichii-kun, whether you can train the real Hadu will depend on this. China doesn't pay much attention to this area of research. However, they are still very careful. We haven't gotten anything these few days. Their leader dealt with it very cleanly, Moko Yamashita said after a few seconds of silence. Xinjiang, Miluo and Nanjing, could it be that they are also collecting? The guy with messy hair curled his lips and answered, with their level of scientific research. He didn't finish his sentence, but his disdain was obvious. Chapter 466. After watching and Chaoyang walk towards the arena, Lu Cheng and the rest were either in a daze, looking at their phones, or studying the bathroom map. They were all waiting for the match to start and didn't talk to each other anymore. Why don't you guys say a few words? Didn't you guys discuss how you would have fought if you were in his place? What are your chances of winning? Leader Zhong Ningtao broke the silence with interest. Lu Cheng looked at him and said with a smile, Those are all matches where we have a high chance of winning. For this kind of match, saying that and Chaoyang will lose is a jinx, but believing that he can win is a disgrace. No matter what I say, it's better not to say it. Yeah. Renli nodded in agreement. Yeah, that's it. Peng Liyun returned from outer heavens. Lu Qing summed it up really well. As he walked towards the arena, and Chaoyang took out a hair band from his pocket and tied up his half-length hair so that it wouldn't affect his battle. He walked up and stood on the left side of the referee. He adjusted his body and let the lake in his heart settle down gradually. There were no more ripples or waves, and thus it became deep and calm. It reflected his surroundings and connected with his thoughts, allowing him to analyze his opponent more quickly, accurately and clearly. The unique skill of the water sect, lake and mirror wisdom. After reaching the physical invulnerability stage, it could still be upgraded. It was also called lake and mirror wisdom, but there would be an additional prefix. The seventh style of the water sect. And Chaoyang's eyes turned dark and rippled. And Chaoyang's aura slowly spread outwards. Banam, who wasn't tall, had a body as hard as iron, and his hands and feet were wrapped in white bandages. When he saw his opponent, he couldn't help but feel like he was facing a vast ocean. It was boundless, deep and distant, gently rippling, containing and engulfing everything. This kind of aura spread and spread, causing the surroundings to become oppressive and dull. It made people anxious and anxious, just like the scene before a storm. A storm is coming. Banam's Zahi boxing was a martial art developed from Nanjing's traditional martial arts, Chinese close combat martial arts, battlefield killing techniques, and military assassination techniques. It had the style of the Dark Infinite Sutra, Dark Sect. Therefore, even though he had the secret skill to affect his opponent's spirit, he didn't like to fight head-on. He paused his steps, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. He was like a fish swimming in water, and strangely broke free from Chaoyang's aura suppression and arrived at the predetermined position. He didn't seem to be affected. Only now did he seriously size up the enemy in front of him and compare it with the impression he had after reading the public information. He always had a sleepy face, as if he would yawn at any moment. He was a very intelligent martial artist. The word intelligent did not describe his intelligence as a person, but rather his talent as a martial artist. It was said that he had his own ideas. Due to the isolation, language and many other obstacles, the information that Banam could find on Chaoyang was not complete. Hence, he became even more cautious as he had just advanced. Just as they were sizing each other up, the referee raised his right hand and swung it down. Begin. Banam pounced, but he didn't walk in a straight line. He made a beautiful arc and avoided his opponent's attack. Suddenly, he arrived at his opponent's side. And Chaoyang didn't move. Seeing that he couldn't lock onto his opponent, he stood at his original position and waited for Banam to close in. His biggest reliance was the lake and mirrored, and this was limited by distance. Just as the shadow of his opponent appeared in his deep and dark heart lake, his vision suddenly turned black. It was as if all the lights in the stadium had been extinguished, and there was no moon or stars outside the dome. Not only that, the surroundings were so quiet that it made one's hair stand on end. There wasn't a single sound. If it were other martial artists, they would have panicked. But Chaoyang was already mentally prepared. He didn't care about the darkness and the strange blindness and deafness. Following the undulations in the lake, he clenched his fist, swung his arm sideways and hit horizontally. Bam! From the tip of his fist to his forearm, he touched a cold flesh and blood object. He felt a vicious and sharp force. Amidst the sound of the collision, the darkness instantly shattered. And Chaoyang saw light again, and the sound rang in his ears again. The strange scene just now was Banam's inhuman ability, darkness. Bam! 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 Since Banam didn't succeed in his first move, he immediately switched to close-range fighting mode. After the punch, he immediately bent his elbow and smashed diagonally, or changed to a palm chop and poke, and then followed up with a kick and a knee strike. His crazy attacks were like a storm, and Chaoyang didn't even have time to use force concentration. And Chaoyang was completely suppressed in terms of strength and speed. During this process, the edges of Banam's palms, fingernails, and other places would occasionally flash with a dark light. Bam! 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 And Chaoyang relied on the lake and mirrored, and was always able to detect it a little in advance. With the advantage of internal movement and the defense characteristics of the water sect, he barely managed to hold on. It seemed like he was in a precarious situation, but in fact, he wasn't defeated yet. As a boxing master with a distinct style, Banam didn't have the patience to slowly accumulate his advantages and win. When the battle was in its climax, he suddenly had a change in rhythm. It seemed like he was going to continue attacking, but in fact, he was slower by half a beat. When Chaoyang made a corresponding move, a ray of light flashed in his eyes, forming a strange color. Jia He Quan, serene sting. Seeing this scene, Chaoyang's heart tightened. He couldn't care about anything else and made a decision on the spot. He immediately withdrew his qi, blood, spirit and force. At the same time when Banam activated his secret technique, he gathered his dan in his lower abdomen. The timing was just right, within a millimeter. If he didn't have the lake and mirrored and didn't have the daily practice, Chaoyang definitely wouldn't be able to do something like this. It wouldn't work even if he was fast or slow. The ray of light flashed and immediately dimmed. Banam took half a step forward, swung his arm quickly, and hurriedly threw a punch. He wanted to seize the opportunity when his opponent was affected by the serene sting. However, his serene sting was like hitting a dead person who had lost his flesh and blood. It didn't have much effect. When the Dan force exploded, and Chaoyang instantly regained his vigor. He took the opportunity to expand his arm and threw a right punch, blocking the enemy's attack in time. In the muffled bang, both parties shook. Banam, who didn't use his full strength, was at a disadvantage. And Chaoyang took the opportunity to borrow strength and continuously made Dan's stage outbursts. With the force of flood, each wave stronger than the previous one, he changed from defense to offense. He continuously pressed forward and actually gained the upper hand. Double explosion, triple explosion, quadruple explosion, all the way to 9 consecutive explosions. He kept borrowing strength, and the more he fought, the more valiant he became. Every punch was heavier than the previous one, and every kick was fiercer than the previous one. He beat Banam until he was tired of defending and occasionally retreated. His veins and organs seemed to be drowning and gradually became obstructed. This made Banam feel that something was wrong. He felt that his attack just now was too rushed and had too many problems. It was not in line with his usual thinking, which led to the enemy to seize the opportunity. While defending, he suddenly thought of the oppressive and impatient aura of his opponent. He suddenly understood that he had unknowingly fallen into a trick and made a mistake. He was indeed a very smart martial artist. Bam! After another ferocious attack, and Chaoyang made a change in his rhythm. In his mind, he visualized a rolling torrent, a rising water surface, followed by a dam unable to withstand it, collapsing with a loud bang. Water sect, simplified physical invulnerability, flood. And Chaoyang's body became bigger and bigger. His feet cracked the ground. He didn't swing his fists but leaned sideways. Bam! Banam made the correct response and made a timely defense. However, his center of gravity was still affected and he staggered 2 steps back. And Chaoyang rushed forward immediately. His arms linked together and his legs rotated, making crazy consecutive explosions. Occasionally, he would mix in other moves of the water sect, with the help of the simplified physical invulnerability, flood. He hit Banam until he was on the verge of death. Is he going to win? Zhong Ningtao wiped his swept-back hair and couldn't help but sigh. Can and Chaoyang really defeat an inhuman mighty one? Even if he had just broken through not long ago. After he spoke, Renli glanced at him, shook her head slightly and said softly, "No, he's going to lose." Ah. Zhong Ningtao didn't know if he should doubt his eyes or ears. And Chaoyang had clearly accumulated enough momentum to win. He looked at Lu Cheng and Peng Liyun. One of them was pursing his lips and the other was deep in thought. Both of them didn't look optimistic. In the midst of the fierce battle, and Chaoyang was about to use the last flood. Suddenly, he realized that he was feeling weak. The flow of his strength was no longer smooth. As a result, his moves were half a beat slower. Banam broke free from the suppression and dodged to the side. This weakness didn't disappear quickly. Instead, it got worse. And Chaoyang suddenly remembered that every time they fought, Banam's palms and fingernails shone with a dark light. He also thought of the killer move, Dark Fragrance, that Renli used in the battle with Lu Cheng. Banam's darkness could weaken his opponent without anyone noticing until he was weak. I had been using force concentration previously and neutralized a lot of it. That's why I could hold on until now. Once he lost the initiative and lost his advantage, and Chaoyang couldn't turn the situation around. After being attacked by Banam twice in a row, he finally couldn't hold on and exposed his weakness. His vital points were blocked and in exchange, he heard, Banam wins. Phew, there is still a difference in strength. He sighed, bowed to Banam and turned to leave the arena. After returning to his original position, he didn't talk much about the battle just now with Lu Cheng and the rest. They just high-fived each other, expressing tacit understanding and encouragement in silence. After a while, Peng Liyun defeated his opponent quickly and ended the third round of double elimination. A total of 6 people left after 2 losses, leaving 17 contestants. Because if one more person was eliminated, they would enter the top 16, so there was no point in using a separate day to carry out the 4th round. If the eliminated person was determined in the first match, the audience would only be able to see one match when they arrived at the Xinxiang Stadium. Therefore, the organizing committee started the 4th round of double elimination matches in full swing. They would draw one pair to fight another, and then draw a second pair after that. Before Lu Cheng and the rest were drawn, the 17th place of the King of Youth Pro League was decided in the first match. The 8th seed, Li Shaokong, was the top 16. The top 6 seeds, 4 wild cards and 6 contestants who passed the stage were born. At this stage, there would be prize money. The top 16 would be 100,000, the top 8 would be 200,000, the 4th place would be 400,000, the 3rd place would be 500,000, the 2nd place would be 700,000 and the champion would be 1,500,000. Rest for the next 2 days. Don't go anywhere. After returning to the hotel, the leader, Zhong Ningtao, reminded them and took a look at Renli. Lu Qing nodded and had no objections. On his way to his room, he took out his phone and sent a message to Yan Zhika. Clenching fist expression, I'm going to stay up late tonight. I need to master Emperor Yan force while the iron is hot. I need to start transforming in these 2 days. P.S. I've completed all my updates. Looking for recommendation votes and monthly votes in the middle of the night. Chapter 467. It didn't take long for Yan Zhika, who was in class, to reply to Lu Cheng's declaration. Go for it, hubby. Lu Cheng couldn't help but laugh. First, he replied with an emoji of, I'm determined to do better with a red scarf on my head. Then, he put down his phone and set up a stance in the room. He visualized the statue of Emperor Yan, which was heavy as its core and was clothed in flames. With this, he controlled the flame force in his body and guided it to slowly condense and compress. This practice lasted for 4 to 5 hours, with occasional breaks. When more than 80% of the lights outside the window had been extinguished, darkness once again ruled the world, and Lu Qing suddenly opened his eyes. A cluster of blazing white flames flashed in the depths of his eyes, like the sun hanging on the horizon in the early morning. Upgrading one's force was neither easy nor difficult. After grasping the essence of the Emperor Yan diagram, and using the experience of Ice Spirit Force as a reference, he successfully completed the transformation from Zhu Rong Force to Emperor Yan Force. The fire force in his body turned from red to white. It was thick and heavy, and it barely formed a cycle. He didn't need to practice it again every time he finished using it. Lu Qing rotated his neck and shook his head, making his bones crackle like beans popping in a fire. He adjusted his breath, took the access card, and left the room, heading for the hotel pool on the 31st floor. It was midnight, and the pool was already closed. There was no one around, but this wasn't a problem for Lu Qing. He found a window and jumped out. He jumped over the various obstacles on the outer wall as if he was walking on flat ground and entered from the other side. In the darkness, the pool was quiet, so deep that he couldn't see the bottom. It felt like a horror movie. Lu Qing kicked off his shoes and socks, took off his t-shirt and shorts, and jumped into the pool bare-chested. There were no flowers or waves, only circles of ripples spreading out slowly. Not long after, he reached the bottom. He sat down with his legs crossed and closed his eyes. His breathing had stopped. His body was isolated from the air and surrounded by gentle waves. It was as if he had returned to his mother's womb before he was born. His heart was calm. Naturally, there were slight changes in his internal circulation. His spirit could see his internal organs, fascia, blood vessels, and muscles without visualization. The Ice Spirit Holy Light portrait and the Emperor Yan portrait intertwined. He took this opportunity to circulate the two forces and experience their dependence and attraction on the root pulp. In this environment, this feeling was subtle and peculiar. Every once in a while, Lu Qing had to surface to breathe out the old and take in the new. Then, he would sink to the bottom again to feel his grasp and try to influence it. Failure after failure. Although he had pushed open the door to the inhuman stage, there was still a small obstacle before he could start to transform. It was not something that could be done overnight. Huff. It was a little past 5 and the sky was still dark. Lu Qing swam to the edge of the pool and supported himself with both hands. He exhaled some turbid breath and a little impatience. When his emotions calmed down, the ice mirror condensed again. He continued to flip over and sink, persevering. This time, after failing to gain anything from his visualization of the Emperor Yen portrait and the Ice Spirit Holy Light portrait, he changed his train of thought and attempted force concentration. His qi and blood contracted and his mind sank inward. Ice and fire formed a balance, intertwining with each other in a rotating manner. It was as though he had formed a human body Big Dan that reflected the nebula in his lower abdomen. Inside the Big Dan, there was a sudden change. The Ice Spirit Holy Light portrait spread out and turned into a boundless background of stars. It was dark, cold, and empty. There was no heat and no sound. The Emperor Yen portrait collapsed and reformed again. It threw out streams of flames and matter, turning into great suns and stars. The two were in perfect balance, like a true projection of the universe. It was different from what it was before. Lu Cheng's body trembled. He felt as though the human body Big Dan he was holding had a subtle reflection of the starry sky above him and his surroundings. With a hum, the Jin Dan in his lower abdomen was affected and vibrated. The water rippled and the starlight flickered. Compared to the human body Big Dan, there was a sense of disharmony and imperfection. The Big Dan exploded and force gushed out. At this moment, Lu Qing suddenly felt the subtle movement of his root pulp and vaguely grasped it. Unknowingly, he found himself floating to the surface of the water. He opened his eyes and thought about what had happened. He felt that his balance of ice and fire and human body Big Dan were more complete than Longhu Immortal's Jin Dan. They were also closer to nature. This would be very important for him to reach the Alcade state in the future. Sure enough, the times are changing. So is training, Lu Qing thought happily. What a lucky thing to be standing on the shoulders of so many great masters. You can learn from the predecessors but not from them. After inspecting himself, he sank to the bottom again. Following his previous train of thought, he used force concentration to balance ice and fire and affected his root pulp. Dawn broke and the morning light shone on the swimming pool. It illuminated most of the frozen ice and frost on the surface of the water and the various hot springs that were bubbling with steam. Splash! With the sound of water, Lu Qing stood up and stood on the surface of the water. Only his ankles were still submerged in the water. His hair was wet and his exposed muscles were well defined but not deformed. Droplets of water slid down the surface of his skin, giving him the masculine beauty of a man. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. Lu Qing walked on the water without sinking. He slowly walked to the edge of the swimming pool and picked up his t-shirt, shorts, shoes, socks and other things. He casually put them on and left this level. Because of his supernatural ability, he had created a much more exaggerated spectacle than Peng Liyun's. Back in his room, Lu Qing picked up his phone. An uncontrollable smile appeared on his face. He typed a bunch of words and sent it to Yenjika. You'll be able to see my 5th pin certificate in September. Yes, he had just succeeded in guiding the mutation of his root pulp. In other words, he had officially started to transform. In another 10 days, he would be completely reborn and become an inhuman. And from now on, until the transformation is complete, I will truly become stronger day by day. It will be visible to the naked eye. Yenjika, who hadn't finished her last class, quickly replied with an emoji covering its mouth to hide its laughter. Cheng, if we were to use another way to describe inhuman, you are now a genuine inhuman. Cheng, you are not a human. After sending this sentence, she added a laughing out loud emoji. Feeling the joy and excitement hidden in the girl's words, Lu Cheng's mood improved. He shook his head slightly and laughed out loud. Suddenly, he had the urge to look at her and video chat with her. He had been practicing with her every morning for the past few days and had missed the best time to video chat. But considering that Yan Zhike was still in class, he resisted the urge and only replied with a text message. In class, Yan Zhike was happy, proud, and a little melancholy. Cheng is getting better and better. What about me? She raised her head and looked at the teacher. Her motivation to learn suddenly increased. I also want to be a better version of myself. On the 31st floor of the hotel, the swimming pool was open. Men and women who were used to exercising in the morning arrived. They all did their warm-up and jumped into the seemingly normal water. It's so cold. A girl cried out. Oh, it's hot. A guy jumped up and jumped into the hot spring without any preparation. At the same time, Lu Cheng called Geyser Shi and reported the good news, Master, I have mastered Emperor Yan Force. He did not mention that he had started to transform. He planned to tell his master when it was almost time. Well, not bad. Geyser Shi was not surprised. He had expected it. He clicked his tongue and said, Little brat, you can try to transform now. Besides breaking through in the water, there are actually a few other ways. I think it might be more suitable for you. For example, Lu Cheng was stunned. After a moment of confusion, he said, Master, why didn't you say so earlier? I have started to transform. I spent a lot of effort in the water to start the transformation. Geyser Shi was very experienced. He guessed his disciple's state. He laughed and said, I have never seen such a silly disciple like you. Who doesn't ask their master for advice before breaking through? Even if they talked about this before, it would not be so detailed. Ha, cough, he laughed so hard that he started coughing. He felt that this was the only thing that could make him happy this year. Lu Cheng's face turned red. He cursed his master in his heart and replied embarrassedly, I just wanted to try it myself and ask you if I have any problems. You don't have to say so much. Cough, master, haha, little brat, practice hard. Geyser Shi hung up the phone, hummed a tune and found his precious wine. A day and a half later, Lu Cheng caught up on sleep and continued to transform. He also found a suitable time to video chat with Yan Zhike. On the 20th of August, the Xinxiang Stadium was packed with people. The heat wave gathered again and the fierce battle started again. Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun and the rest sat in their seats. They first watched a song and dance performance. Then, they saw the guest on stage to draw lots for the top 16 battle. There would be 4 battles tonight and tomorrow night. The guest reached into the box and took out a round ball. He looked at the words on it and announced while showing it, China, Lu Cheng. Damn, the first one was picked. Lu Cheng was amused. He straightened his back and waited for his opponent to confirm. The guest reached out again, fumbled around and took out the second round ball. He showed it, Japan, Muko Yamashita. Number 5 seed, Muko Yamashita. P.S. Today is the Dragon Boat Festival. I have something to do in the afternoon and tonight at midnight. Please continue to ask for monthly votes and recommendation tickets. Chapter 468. Japan, Muko Yamashita. Hearing the guest's announcement, Muko Yamashita's expression changed. He revealed a smile and muttered to himself, great. In the third round of the double elimination competition, his confidence had been shaken because of Lu Cheng's easy victory over Bako. This was unforgivable. This was the intolerable weakness in the tradition of the ultimate Hadith sect. He had to make up for it immediately and defeat it immediately. Now that he had drawn Lu Cheng, it was exactly what he wanted. He would use this victory to wash away his stain. Furthermore, this could help in the completion of the secret mission. Beside Muko Yamashita, the researcher with messy hair pushed his glasses up and beamed with joy. Ichii Sakata and the rest of the team were also filled with anticipation. There was even a fanatical shout, "Muko-kun, it's time to prove the name of the ultimate Hada sect." Since the start of the competition, Muko Yamashita's luck had been good. He had not encountered any strong opponents and had not been able to display the strength of the ultimate Hada sect. On the other hand, Ichii Sakata and the rest had been eliminated one after another, causing the sect to lose face. Faced with the request, Muko Yamashita straightened his back and nodded with confidence, "Okay, ha-e." Muko Yamashita. Lu Qing was stunned for a second before he mocked himself. What luck! He had encountered an inhuman in the round of 16. He was not surprised or disappointed by the draw. The round of 16 still followed the rule of not meeting each other in the same country. Apart from the 4 of them, there were still 12 options. There were 5 inhumans and the probability of drawing them was close to 50%. On the way to the Xinxiang Stadium, he had already mentally prepared himself to face strong opponents. Without waiting for Peng Liyun, and Chaoyang and Renli to speak, Lu Qing lowered his head and looked at his phone. He sent an emoji with tears of laughter to Yenjika. "I've drawn another tiger, Schrodinger's tiger versus wild tiger Yamashita. I'm betting on quantum theory school to win." Yenjika replied quickly. From time to time, she would take out her phone to check if there was a result of the draw. She sent an emoji touching its head and said, "If you had drawn Fierce Tiger from Nakayama a few days ago, I would have been very unsure. But you have started to transform for 2 days. I have high hopes for you." Patting shoulder, "Then I can only live up to Coach Yan's expectations." Lu Qing sent an emoji. To be honest, he was quite confident, so much so that he was eager to give it a try. Muko Yamashita had only mastered Hadu in May. After changing his rank, his standard was at least half a level lower than Vagar's. If I could fight Vagar to such an extent before my transformation, what more now? In the past 2 days, my strength could be described as, even when I drink water, my strength is increasing. After replying to the message, he felt something in his heart. He looked up and found Peng Liyun, Renli, and Chaoyang, and Zhong Ningtao looking at him. "What's wrong?" Lu Qing asked in confusion. "I was wondering if I should encourage you or comfort you, but looking at you, it seems that there is no need to say anything." Peng Liyun laughed and said meaningfully. This guy was happily playing with his phone, and his smile never faded. He didn't need us to say anything. And Chaoyang opened his eyes and nodded at the same time as Renli. Lu Qing laughed dryly and pointed to the ring. "It's the second group." In this group, Vagar was up against a non-seeded, non-wild card player. Taking the opportunity, Lu Qing glanced at the screen again and replied. At this moment, he saw a message from Talker. "I heard that you are going to fight against an inhuman." "How did you know?" Shocked expression, Lu Qing replied. "I don't think I have ever mentioned to Little Ming about participating in the King of Youth Pro League. We have been talking about other things for the past few days. On a whim, I surfed your forum and found out that you have been handed over to the country. Now you are fighting in the King of Youth Pro League. You have even drawn the inhuman mighty one from Japan, Muko Yamashita. He has a grudge against his parents, right?" Kai Zongming said with a proud smile, "That's why I'm here to tell you something to comfort you after encountering a strong enemy." "What is it?" Lu Qing replied casually without thinking. Kai Zongming said with a sly smile, "Be strong. Get lost." Lu Qing said concisely and couldn't help but laugh. As time passed, the third group was drawn. Bantam was lucky and also faced a non-seeded, non-wild card opponent. After a while, the guests started to draw the fourth group and called out Peng Liyun's name. The atmosphere of the other representatives suddenly changed and became more tense. Without letting them guess for too long, the guest grabbed the round ball, took a look and displayed, "Xinxiang, Waku. Third seeded, Arhat, Waku." Not bad. Peng Liyun's lazy expression turned serious and his eyes lit up like lightning. It seemed that he had been looking forward to facing such an opponent for a long time. Lu Cheng and the rest didn't say much and only felt sympathy for Waku for 3 seconds. It's your turn to see what a serious demon king is like. At the Xinjiang representative group, Waku put his hands in front of his chest and looked as sad as usual. The other members around him also looked unhappy. After that, different guests drew the 4th group for the next day. Renly continued her good luck and like Vagar and Banam, she would face a non-seeded, non-wild card opponent. And Chaoyang was neither good nor bad and faced the 6th-seeded, Gusai, who was ranked the highest below the inhuman stage. After the ceremony, all the representatives returned to the changing room and took a short break. The first match would officially start at 8:15 p.m. Lu Qing vs Muko Yamashita. In the live stream thread, when Lu Qing drew the inhuman mighty one, it was already in an uproar. There were different opinions and discussions. Unparalleled Dragon King said with a funny face, "Don't be nervous. Lu Cheng has a high chance of winning this match. Even if it's not 50%, it should be around 30%. Think about it, he almost defeated Vagar, what more the weaker Muko Yamashita. As long as he can reproduce the performance he had when he defeated Bako, it's not impossible for him to win. But the feeling of fighting an opponent who is weaker than you and one who is stronger than you is definitely different. Lu Qing probably won't be able to reproduce that smooth performance." Pig Riding Knight pointed out the problem and got the approval of Road to the Arena and the rest. Invincible Punch was more inclined towards the judgment of Unparalleled Dragon King. When Lu Qing fought with Vagar, he also performed above his usual standards. It was different that time. He had something new and had the Do formula. He caught Vagar off guard and caused him to misjudge. But now, everyone has more or less grasped his foundation. Facing an inhuman, it will be hard for him to gain the upper hand and create opportunities. A plumber eating mushroom wasn't very optimistic. That's right. But it's still the same old problem. Muko Yamashita is weaker than Vagar. With both sides weakened, Lu Qing still has a chance. Unparalleled Dragon King insisted on his opinion. Eternal Nightfall, Yan Shaoling, secretly observing, said, "All of you make sense. I choose to die, no, pray, make a wish. I support Xiaolong." Oh right, did any of you inform all-knowing man in ganghood and ask him to prepare to delete his account? At most 3 months. Brahman used this to ease the anxiety and nervousness in her heart. I've already tagged him, no need to thank me. I'm a red scarf. Okamoto's fan said with a sly smile. At this moment, all-knowing man in ganghood was browsing through the videos of the first few matches of the King of Ganghood. His expression was getting worse and worse. At most 2 months. He gritted his teeth and muttered, "I have to start directing my popularity to the public account. When the time comes, I won't feel bad about deleting my Weibo account. At most, I'll just create a smaller one. Yes, I have to hurry. I don't want Lu Qing to break through before I'm done directing my popularity." At 8:10 p.m. all the representatives came out from their respective changing rooms and returned to their original positions. Muko Yamashita placed his hands on his knees and waited for a while. When the referee appeared, he stood up abruptly like a towering mountain. "Muko-kun, please." The researcher with messy hair bowed at the side. Muko Yamashita nodded slightly in response. As the order of the draw was Lu Cheng before him, he could only give up on his white karate suit and change into a dark red one. Just as he was about to stride towards the ring, he caught a glimpse of the sweet Kaori Karasawa from the corner of his eye. She took 2 steps forward and stood at the same level as him. Her voice was soft and low, but it did not leak out a single bit as it drilled into his ear. "Are you sure you want to do as they say?" Muko Yamashita was puzzled and turned his head to look. Kaori Karasawa looked straight ahead and said calmly, "This is a martial art of martial arts. As long as you're in the arena, you have to respect your opponent. Furthermore, Lu Qing isn't weak. If you're in a hurry to collect materials, you might lose to him. Mukko-kun, give it your all. After defeating him, we'll see what we can do. Mukko Yamashita was silent for a moment and didn't reply. He strode forward and approached the stone steps with an imposing manner. After taking 2 or 3 steps forward, he turned his back to Kori Karasawa and nodded slightly. Glancing at the digital clock, Lu Qing stood up and bumped fists with Peng Liyun and the rest. He could hear the cheers of "good luck." At this moment, his phone rang with a special notification. He picked it up and saw that Yen Jika had sent him a picture of an oven. There were cakes and other things in it. The color was a little burnt and the shape was weird. "Cough, I'm taking the time to practice this." Looking up at the sky expression, said the girl. "So, you want to say, good luck, I'll wait for you to eat?" Lu Qing smiled and helped her to fill in the blanks. Yen Jika replied, thumbs up expression, "Qing, you know me best. Good luck. Victory for sure." Lu Qing shouted out the slogan, pushed out of QQ, and switched to the live post interface. He threw the phone to An Chaoyang and laughed out loud. "Make me look more handsome in the photo." As he spoke, he walked towards the arena with his head held high. There was no fear, only the will to fight. P.S. The last day of May. Looking for a monthly ticket and a recommendation ticket. It would be a waste if it expired. Chapter 469. You have a good attitude. Hearing Lu Cheng's words, An Chaoyang couldn't help but smile at Peng Liyun and Renli. He then picked up his phone and played with it for a few seconds. With a click, he took a picture of his teammate's back. Although it wasn't towering or broad, it was firm and high-spirited enough. He lowered his head to admire it and secretly praised himself, "Please call me reliable N." While thinking, he uploaded the picture and added the caption, "Onward journey, fearless of strong enemies." After posting, he immediately refreshed the page. He couldn't believe that there were a few more replies. He couldn't help but feel that this place was very popular and that there was a trend of floor grabbing. Not bad. Praised, unparalleled Dragon King, concisely. Wonton Seller, followed closely, little tiger, I didn't know you were so cultured. Come, learn how to cook from me. Ah. And Chaoyang's eyebrows twitched. His sleepy eyes narrowed into slits. He quickly refreshed the page again. This time, Brahman sent an emoji biting her finger, "This picture is so close." Schrodinger's tiger, don't tell me you're at the spectators stand beside them? And Chaoyang swallowed his saliva and replied with difficulty, "Yes." At this moment, Lu Cheng was already close to the arena. As his opponent was strong and inhuman, he couldn't recreate the leisurely and carefree attitude he had when he was facing Bako. His body was nervous and slightly trembling, secreting hormones to make him more focused and excited. He knew that the subtle state he was in previously was something that could only be encountered but not sought. He didn't feel dejected and kept his thoughts. He visualized ice mirror and let the lake water settle, making his emotions like ice. Under the premise that his body didn't move, it reflected the vigorous fighting spirit and the bloodthirst of the weapons, causing his aura to rise naturally, turning into a terrifying snowstorm that was about to take shape. His body was the towering white snow mountain in this terrifying natural disaster. There seemed to be a whistling sound in the air and the atmosphere became oppressive. Lu Cheng walked up the stone steps step by step and entered the arena. He saw Mukko Yamashita who appeared at the same time. This warrior at the inhuman level was taller and wider than him. He had thick eyebrows and a rough appearance. His muscles were shocking. Compared to him, it was like a battle between an adult and a junior high school student. Mukko Yamashita had a fanatical look on his face, and his aura was equally shocking. A faint white glow was emitted from his body, freezing the surrounding atmosphere. The spectators along the way were so shocked that they kept quiet out of fear. No one dared to make a sound. Woo! Wind seemed to swirl around him as he moved. At this moment, Liu Cheng's and Muko Yamashita's eyes met. The center of the arena seemed to have brightened up a little. In terms of momentum, they were evenly matched. The referee was an experienced Inhuman-level expert. After looking left and right, he raised his right hand calmly and got ready. Liu Cheng and Muko Yamashita didn't need to make any further adjustments. Throughout the journey, they had already pushed their condition to the peak. The referee took a step back and suddenly waved his hand. He exhaled and shouted, "Begin." Muko Yamashita shifted his feet and lowered his body. Suddenly, he swung his right fist at the same spot. Bam! Extending his arm and pulling his fist, he glided forward with a whistling sound. He was as fast as a high-speed train, and in an instant, he was in front of Liu Cheng. During this process, the white glow around him suddenly thickened. Like a torch that was lit with a swoosh, he dragged the shape of a dragon and a tiger in the air, stirring up a terrifying loud sound. Ultimate Hado's Sect Killer Move, Roaring Dragon and Tiger Fist. Compared to Ichii Sakata, Muko Yamashita was able to use this move with ease. It was perfectly integrated with his own flash attack. This is the standard of the Inhuman level. Good move. Liu Cheng wasn't afraid. Instead, he was overjoyed. His fighting spirit was high, and his chi, blood, force, and spirit were retracted into a ball. Ice and fire were balanced, forming a rotating miniature starry sky. Snap! The statue of God appeared in his mind. His legs thickened and instantly pushed inward, causing his right arm to expand. He threw a powerful punch in front of him. Bam! A layer of red and white flames ignited on the surface of his fist, condensing and solidifying layer by layer. The half-formed Emperor Yen force. Boom! The sound of their fists colliding was swallowed by the loud explosion. The image of his bulging muscles and bulging veins were covered by the rolling waves of fire and the dissipating white glow. Muko Yamashita's body swayed and quickly stabilized. The surface of his clothes was charred black. Liu Cheng took a step back and stepped into the ground. His muscles were aching and numb from the Hado. After a full-force attack, he was only slightly inferior. On the spectator's stand, Peng Liyun's expression changed slightly. He was half exclaiming and half laughing. He's transformed. Being able to add a force after force concentration was one of the main characteristics of the Inhuman level. Liu Cheng's punch just now clearly showed that he was in the transformation stage and had been in it for more than a day. So fast. And Chaoyang couldn't help but exclaim after witnessing the changes in the arena and hearing Peng Liyun's words. How many days has it been since the start of the King of Youth League? He's practically sprinting to the transformation stage with one step each day. Sigh, I'm not as good as you. Renli opened her mouth, wanting to say something. She forced herself to hold it in, biting her lip lightly. Inhuman. In the live post, Unparalleled Dragon King shouted out the two words that many people couldn't believe. After the transformation, as long as one didn't accidentally die or suffer from serious injuries, reaching the Inhuman level was a sure thing. My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Shocked expression, replied Pig Riding Knight. How long has it been? Road to the arena expression, said, laughing angrily. It hasn't even been 4 months since the end of the nationals. Ha 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 ha. Yen Shaoling didn't even type. Instead, she sent a voice message. Her voice was no different from a primary school student's. All-knowing man in ganghood, who was watching the live broadcast and writing a long Weibo post to increase the popularity of his public account, was stunned. His face gradually turned pale, like dead ashes. Isn't there still 2 more months before the breakthrough? It's only been 2 minutes. It's only been 2 minutes since I found out about it. That's really an animal. In the arena, Liu Cheng took a step back to reduce the force, followed closely by the contraction of his chi and force. Using the techniques of 24 blizzard strikes and the little experience he had gained from yin-yang twist, he launched a counterattack. Bam! His left leg swelled and his instep straightened. He pulled it out from the crack and whipped his opponent's knee with the force of a whip. After realizing that his opponent had achieved another breakthrough, Muko Yamashita, who was already in battle mode, turned his shock and surprise into a fire in his heart. It burned his will and burned even more fiercely. Bending and straightening his knees, he suddenly jumped up and avoided Lu Cheng's kick. At the same time, he extended his right hand and turned his palm into a knife. With a bright glow, he used the momentum of his fall to slash his opponent's neck at lightning speed. Ferocious Tiger Electric Chop. Lu Cheng exerted strength in his spine and suddenly bent his back. Not only did he avoid Muko Yamashita's slash, but he also forcefully changed the trajectory of his left leg. He lifted it from the bottom up and kicked towards his opponent's body. At the same time, a bright white glow appeared and gathered into a ball. Along with the martial arts shoes, it spurted out, burning. After the transformation, he could also use ice burning on his feet. The martial arts shoes quickly froze and hardened, turning into a stone. Dragging a sparkling flame, it went straight for Muko Yamashita's chest. In the blink of an eye, Muko Yamashita quickly raised his left palm and pressed it against his right hand that had missed. Spreading his palm downward, he struck out a ball of solid and flashing white hadu amidst the dragon's roar. Bam! 2 balls of light scattered silently. Using the recoil, Muko Yamashita leaped back onto the ground. His posture was not messed up. Lu Cheng straightened his back and stood up steadily again. Bam! Muko Yamashita slid and swung his fist again. The white glow was thick and the dragon's roar was loud. Lu Cheng did not budge an inch. Going tit for tat, he contracted his chi and blood and followed with force. Bam bam bam. Muko Yamashita's every move was a sure kill. He launched a frenzied attack. The white glow was like a torch, dimming and brightening at times. Compared to Ichii Sakata, who had to wait for a while to use similar moves, the difference was like heaven and earth. Bam bam bam. Lu Cheng continued to unleash explosive attacks. He was in an intense battle with his opponent. Although he was at a disadvantage due to the difference in strength, he did not show any signs of losing. Bam bam bam, bam bam bam. The sound of punches and kicks reverberated in the surroundings. Occasionally, there were loud booms. Layers of white glow and flames spread outwards. The ground cracked, splashed, and snowflakes fell from time to time. It truly illustrated the meaning of inhuman. Muko Yamashita had a firm grasp of the rhythm. Every time Lu Cheng used the force concentration version of 24 blizzard strikes to accumulate momentum, he would immediately switch to whirlwind kick or hadouken to forcefully interrupt and start all over again. At the same time, he was accumulating his emotions bit by bit, preparing to unleash his killer move. As time passed, Lu Cheng, who had unleashed his ice mirror multiple times, felt that this could not go on any longer. He took the initiative to seek a change. Bam! When his controlled Dan left fist, infused with the half-formed ice spirit force, collided with his enemy's fist, which was enveloped in a dense white light, the perfect snowflakes formed by the shockwave drifted down. Muko Yamashita's arm was a little stiff. Using the rebounding force, he suddenly slid backwards. Sliding on the bumpy ground, his speed was not much different from charging forward. At the bottom of his bare feet, a layer of crystal-clear ice had formed at some point in time. The friction was extremely small. Without hesitation, Muko Yamashita took a big step forward and gave chase. Before he even got close, he let out a low roar and swung his fist. His body was once again engulfed in a thick white glow. As he retreated, Lu Cheng had already visualized the dark, cold, and dreamy ice spirit holy light. Facing the incoming enemy, he stepped on the ground and immediately counterattacked. He shook his right arm and used severe warning. Seeing that the two fists were about to collide, the white glow in Muko Yamashita's eyes suddenly intensified. The thick hadouken on the surface of his body suddenly surged forward and condensed into a ball, turning into a glove and covering the outside. I know you have a move to freeze the mind. How could I not be on guard and prepared? Bam! Lu Cheng's fist landed. The ball of white glow quickly dimmed and turned into a snowball before shattering into pieces. Bam! Passing through the Hadouken, the moment the two fists met, greenish-black skin and veins appeared. Taking 2 steps back, Lu Cheng retreated. Not only did he fail to freeze the enemy, but he also messed up his stance due to the difference in strength. However, he didn't panic. As his body instinctively regained its balance, he raised his hands and formed a seal, outlining a sharp, army character. On the other hand, Muko Yamashita saw the opportunity. His eyebrows furrowed, and the emotions that had been accumulating in his heart suddenly exploded, causing his eyes to turn red. The white light that had once again permeated around him to be dyed red, thick and sticky with blood. Ultimate Hadouken Sect, Sure Kill, 7 Sins Hadouken. A double attack on the mind and body. Unlike Ichii Sakata, who had to go all out to use it, Muko Yamashita could use it as long as he had accumulated enough emotions. Army. The deep ancient voice reverberated, stirring up ripples in the blood-red glow. This made Muko Yamashita slow down by half a beat. However, he was like a stone that fell into the sea. There were no other movements. Bam! Muko Yamashita stepped forward with his left leg, flexed his shoulders, puffed up his arms and swung his right fist. He turned the thick blood-red glow into a scythe, propelling him forward and slashing towards Lu Cheng. It was as fast as a flash of red lightning, leaving no chance for the enemy to dodge. I've seen how you broke Ichii Sakata's 7 Sins Hadouken with a move of your own creation. However, there's a big difference between me and him. If you dare to try again, you'll regret it. Although Lu Cheng's army formula didn't produce the best results, it neutralized the mental attack caused by the blood-red Hadouken, preventing him from being shaken and unable to visualize. He straightened his back and slipped again. He tried his best to dodge but couldn't. The blood-red scythe was right in front of him in an instant. However, he had already grasped the short window of opportunity created by Muko Yamashita's slow rhythm and his own retreat. In his mind, he visualized the dark and cold background of the starry sky. There was a faint glimmer of the dreamy light of the ice soul. Boom! The dust accumulated and ignited a gigantic and heavy fireball. It crashed into the silence, shattering and collapsing everything even more violently. After perfecting Ice Spirit Force and Emperor Yen Force, respectively, Lu Cheng's mutated version of Severe Warning had also made corresponding improvements. There were some wonderful changes. I've waited so long for you to use 7 Sins Hadouken to meet force with force. Lu Cheng's eyes widened in anger. He took a step forward, turned around and faced the blood-red scythe head-on with a crushing punch. Poof! A terrifying vortex of attraction seemed to have been generated by his fist, allowing the bloody light to surge in without a sound. The bizarre and terrifying follow-up that it carried was completely cut off. The two fists were close to each other, momentarily frozen in midair. Muko Yamashita felt his body suddenly empty, as if he had lost the strength to retract his arm. What's going on? It's completely different from what Ichii Sakata described. It's stronger and scarier. In his shock, Muko Yamashita suddenly felt the blood-red glow surging back. The force exploded, shaking his soul and body. Thump thump thump. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth as he took 3 steps back. How could Lu Cheng let go of this opportunity? He immediately chased after him with the attainment formula, retracted his chi and blood, and then unleashed it again, throwing another punch. Bam bam bam, bam bam bam. This time, he had the upper hand, using force concentration to drive 24 blizzard strikes to attack wildly. Emperor Yen and Ice Spirit intertwined, getting fiercer and fiercer. After holding on for a while, Muko Yamashita couldn't take it anymore as his opponent's strength was getting stronger. He started to retreat, but there was no end to this retreat. He kept retreating, in a precarious situation. The Japanese delegation fell silent and lost their minds. It can't be, right? Mukko-kun is going to lose. Bam bam bam, Lu Cheng's blood vessels were expanding, and his punches and kicks were getting stronger. He didn't care about the energy consumption and wanted to finish this battle in one go. My current stamina is slightly higher than a new inhuman, and Mukko Yamashita, who is at a disadvantage, is trying his best to fight back. Every punch and kick will consume more energy than me, who has the advantage. Let's see who's afraid of who in this battle. Bam bam bam. The sound of punches and kicks filled the air, like the beating of a drum, continuously beating on the hearts of the audience. The surface of the arena was already in tatters, and there were even stones flying out. Because of this, the first few rows of the audience seats had to be empty in a battle at the inhuman level. Mukko Yamashita was a very patient samurai. Even if he was in a desperate situation, even if his stamina was decreasing rapidly, he didn't panic. He just silently gathered his emotions. Finally, he held on until his emotions were sufficient. The white waves around him were dyed with the color of blood again. Dark red blood, flowing blood, an intimidating blood color. Although Lu Cheng was on guard and used the forwarding formula in time, he finally slowed down a little. He saw Mukko Yamashita exerting force on his legs and leaping backwards. Dodge? Can you dodge? Lu Cheng's fighting spirit surged, and he gathered his chi and blood again. He stepped on a crack and pounced forward. Let's see how you can dodge in your current state. At this point in the fierce battle, both parties' blood was boiling, and their emotions were high. Fortunately, Lu Cheng's ice mirror wasn't affected. It could still reflect the surroundings and make accurate judgments. At this moment, Mukko Yamashita, who was almost in front of Lu Cheng, suddenly raised his hands and formed a strange seal. His expression became solemn and his eyes were fixed on Lu Cheng. Indeed, you are very strong, a terrifying and respectable opponent. You actually forced me to this point, but the final victory will still belong to me. In Lu Cheng's eyes, the image of Mukko Yamashita moving his abdomen, opening his mouth and roaring, "Jia." The "Jia" formula of the 9 words formula. Mukko Yamashita actually knew one of the 9 words formula. The "Jia" formula was mysterious and strange, as if it was connecting the heaven and earth to stimulate his body. Mukko Yamashita's aura suddenly surged, and his previous fatigue and weak state was swept away. He was back to his peak state, and all his depleted energy was replenished. This. Lu Cheng's pupils shrank, and he actually felt a little depressed that he couldn't control. It wasn't easy for him to grind his inhuman opponent into a near-death state, and his "Jia" formula was as good as new again. How can I fight like this? Bam! The ice mirror in his heart flashed, and he put away all his negative thoughts. He rushed in front of Mukko Yamashita, bulged his muscles, and threw a punch. The blood-red color around Mukko Yamashita swayed rapidly. It didn't turn into a scythe, but it increased his speed and strength by a few notches. He hammered his arm down in time and blocked Lu Cheng's attack with a bang. Mind wave state. He took a step forward, and the blood-red color vibrated. Mukko Yamashita circled Lu Cheng and launched a round of frenzied attacks, forcing him to continuously release his Dan force and desperately defend. This caused his muscles and bones to tremble, and his stamina to drop rapidly. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that his defeat was only a matter of time. Phew! The Japanese delegation heaved a sigh of relief, and their expressions relaxed, filled with anticipation. Just a little bit more. Sighed the leader, Zhong Ningtao. As he finished, he saw Peng Liyun and Renli shaking their heads. What do you mean? Zhong Ningtao was a little dumbfounded, while An Chaoyang said thoughtfully, "You guys think Lu Cheng still has a chance?" "It's not just a chance," said Peng Liyun concisely. Renli added, "The current Mukko Yamashita isn't as strong as he looks." Although she said so, Lu Cheng on the arena didn't think so. He only felt that his surroundings were filled with blood-red light, and it was so thick that he couldn't help but feel a little scared. Mukko Yamashita's punches and kicks were full of strength, no different from how strong he was at the beginning. "No. I have to counterattack, I can't be suppressed like this all the time. Although there were changes in his emotions, Lu Cheng's desire to win didn't diminish at all. Facing Muko Yamashita's blood-red fist, he took the initiative to raise his arm, covering it with a thick layer of ice armor. Crack! In the sound of the collision, the ice armor shattered. Lu Cheng took the opportunity to swing his elbow joint, and struck out his forearm towards Muko Yamashita's face, assuming a counterattack stance. Muko Yamashita didn't panic, and raised his other arm to block Lu Cheng's second punch. His right leg was already taut, ready to pull out to forcefully interrupt his opponent's momentum. At this moment, with a snap, Lu Cheng's 5-finger joints moved, and his palms suddenly opened up. 5 ice crystal spikes had formed on his fingernails, looking like auroras. Third punch. Muko Yamashita's eyes turned sharp, and he suddenly tilted his head back to avoid this fatal blow. At the same time, he took the opportunity to kick up with his right leg, drawing a white light like a razor, combining defense with offense. However, after Lu Cheng's third punch, he had already jumped back, and didn't make the first move. Following that, he raised both his arms, formed a hand seal, and shouted in a low and dignified voice, "Fight! Even if I lose, I'll lose with my last bullet." Lu Cheng's muscles bulged, and in an instant, he became tall and big. His right arm, which was placed in front of him, swung out with a strong gust of wind, full of vigor. Seeing this, Muko Yamashita's eyes lit up, and the blood light around him thickened into a scythe, wrapped around his fist, and welcomed the enemy. Boom! The fist collided with the impact, and Muko Yamashita's charging body stopped, and involuntarily slid back half a meter, leaving 2 deep marks on the ground. Lu Cheng, on the other hand, was covered in blood. Not only did he feel like he was struck by lightning, but he also temporarily lost his strength, and took a step back. Both of them recovered at the same time. Muko Yamashita's body was glowing white, and his face was filled with fanaticism. Amidst the roars of dragons and tigers, he turned into a huge white wave, and Tang Huang took the initiative to attack. Lu Cheng didn't back down, and once again formed a hand seal, pointed to himself, and shouted an ancient word that would never admit defeat, "Fight!" Just as he finished his sentence, the fist placed in front of his lower abdomen struck in the opposite direction, from bottom to top, accompanied by the swelling of his muscles, and the protrusion of his blood vessels and veins. Boom! The white light dissipated, and Muko Yamashita flew 2 steps back. Lu Cheng stood still for a moment, almost unable to recover from the numbness and burning sensation. He could clearly feel that his spirit was reaching its limit. Huff! He abruptly exhaled, gathered his remaining strength, and visualized the heavy and hot statue of Yen Di, which was as hot as the grand sun. He compressed all the remaining fire power in his body into a ball, and then controlled it with the fire god Zhu Rong, took a step forward, swung his right arm, and punched out. Fire Sect's simplified physical invulnerability, internal explosion. Lu Cheng chose this move as his severe warning had been neutralized previously. With a swoosh, faint flames ignited on the surface of his fist and arm, and in an instant, it was in front of Muko Yamashita, who had just stabilized his body. After this round of attacks, he wouldn't use the simplified physical invulnerability ability anymore, but he wouldn't give up until the end. He wouldn't give up until the end. White waves danced on the surface of Muko Yamashita's body, igniting his body, and swung his arm to block. Boom! With the sound of an explosion, Muko Yamashita's internal organs were in turmoil, experiencing a terrifying shock. His blood vessels were in extreme pain, as though they were being burned. Lu Cheng wasn't feeling well either. His head was blank, and his muscles were sore. However, he suddenly felt a strong sense of joy in his heart. Because with this punch, he could feel Muko Yamashita's weakness. The wholeness formula seemed like it could only restore stamina, but not heal internal and external injuries. Muko Yamashita's previous injuries were still there, and they were accumulating. Now, they were completely triggered by the internal explosion punch. Chance! Lu Cheng's spirits were lifted. He swung his arms and unleashed Zen consecutively. Bam, 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 bam. He struck Muko Yamashita's blocking arms and fists. His opponent's eyes began to lose focus, his ears were ringing loudly, and his insides were tumbling non-stop. After the 11 consecutive strikes, he did the last force concentration, swelled his arms, raised his fist high, and swung it down fiercely, complemented by tremor Zen. Bam! Muko Yamashita's body jumped, and his vision was filled with golden stars. His eyes, nose, ears, and mouth were all losing dark red blood. He couldn't stand anymore, and crashed onto the floor of the arena with a loud bang. He vomited bile and almost fainted. The referee looked at Lu Cheng, who looked tired but was standing straight. He raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Lu Cheng wins." Chapter 470. Lu Cheng wins. The referee's voice reverberated in the air. Most of the Japanese representatives were filled with grief and anger, especially Ichii Sakata and the other disciples of the extreme Hada sect. They couldn't hide their pain and disappointment. How could Mukoku-kun lose? How could he lose? As one of the trump cards of the extreme Hada sect, he actually lost to an opponent who was weaker than him in terms of both strength and level. This was a disgrace. This was a stain on the extreme Hada sect. It was conceivable that the entire audience, both in the stadium and in front of the screen, would view the extreme Hada sect as a joke. Kaori Karasawa poked her own cheeks and shook her head bitterly in silence. Mukoku-kun was too careless. Firstly, it was because of his own fighting style. Secondly, it was because Ichii Sakata's intel wasn't on point. Mukoku-kun fought too directly, too forcefully, too lacking in roundabout and gentleness. As a result, he took on his opponent's sure-kill move head-on and suffered heavy injuries, leaving behind serious problems in the future. If not for this, Mukoku-kun would have had a good chance of winning the match even without using the wholeness formula. If he had used the wholeness formula, he would have won for sure. What a pity! Of course, Lu Cheng's improvement, changes, and performance made everyone feel pressured from the bottom of their hearts. Hearing Kaori Karasawa's sigh, Ichii Sakata and the others struggled to regain their senses. They shook off their extreme emotions and started to truly understand the battle just now. When they looked at the arena again, their gazes towards Lu Cheng had changed. There was more respect for the strong, astonishment for the miracle worker, and hatred for the terrifying enemy. The researcher with the messy hair was still in a daze, a mixture of fanaticism and confusion. Samurais in the metamorphosis stage in China were the ones with the most research value apart from the strong. The one in the arena was one of them. But Mukoku-kun, who had promised to collect genetic materials for himself for the Japanese, not only did he fail, he fell down, bleeding and spitting out water. It was a pathetic sight. In the stands, the dark-skinned spectators were stunned at first. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then, they raised their hands and applauded or waved. They cheered for the outstanding boxer and cheered for the weak young man who had defeated the strong young man. An unseeded fighter had defeated the monstrous number 5 seed. No matter which country it was, something like this would always be admired and praised. Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng. Amidst his shaky shouts, the sound waves gradually converged and quickly overlapped, each wave louder than the last. Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng. Listening to the shouts of the foreign people, Peng Liyun turned back to look at the arena. The leisurely feeling in his expression was swept away. There seemed to be light gathering in his eyes, just like a flash of lightning. He subconsciously looked at Renli beside him and saw his own reaction in her eyes. There wasn't much of a difference between her and him. Now, perhaps he was still half a step ahead, but the three of them were more or less on the same starting line. Next, it was a competition to see who would be the first to leap over the dragon gate and ascend to the heavens. People like them were prideful in their bones. They could recognize their own shortcomings, but they would never think that they were inferior to others. And Chaoyang fell into silence. He could only remain silent until he heard the leader, Zhong Ningtao, exclaim, "There's no such thing as empty fame." Then he nodded slightly and exhaled. In a secluded area, somewhere else in the stands, Banam, with his hands and legs wrapped in bandages, Vagar, who was wearing a general's cap, and Waku, who was resting with his eyes closed, either subconsciously clenched their fists or had a flash of silver in their eyes. Some opened their eyes and stared silently. "I told you so. Lu Cheng might win." In the live post, Unparalleled Dragon King, used the almighty, smiley face. Pig Riding Knight, replied, confused expression, "This is really 1 year to dance stage, 1 year to inhuman. I feel like I'm looking at the young, Dragon King, no, more like, warrior sage. I won't dare to question him anymore." Said, rode to the arena, with a dog emoji. Okamoto's fan, said, snickering expression, "Yes, just kneel and lick his boots. We really have good foresight." Wonton Seller praised herself generously. "I've long had a good impression of Lu Cheng. I even gave him the petition register. An inhuman below the age of 21, with sufficient time to break through to physical invulnerability, could be considered as a reserve. Ha 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 ha, you didn't let me down by sleeping early and waking up early these few days." Yan Shaoling sent another voice message. Sleeping early and waking up early. A plumber eating mushrooms had recently become familiar with this baby-faced girl from the social circle. He couldn't help but mock her. Sleeping at 2 or 3 in the morning and waking up at 12 in the afternoon. So early. Brahman, on the other hand, said in disdain, "If I didn't wake you up early, little Nightfall, you definitely wouldn't be able to do it. Oh yes, go to Weibo and at all-knowing man in Jianghu and tell him that he can delete his account. Hurry, hurry, hurry." All-knowing man in Jianghu was staring at the computer screen, looking at the private messages and messages that at him. His face was gloomy and his eyes were filled with panic. After a while, he made up his mind and decided to lie a little longer. Anyway, the King of Youth League of 4 Kingdoms wasn't broadcasted directly. Most martial arts enthusiasts wouldn't know about this. I'll just pretend to be deaf and mute for a few weeks and pretend that I didn't see the notifications. I'll wait until Lu Cheng completes his transformation and returns to China to get the 5th pin certificate. I'll attract as many fans as I can during this period. After taking a deep breath, all-knowing man in Jianghu calmed down a little and started typing furiously. He continued his long Weibo post and wanted to seize every minute and second to attract more fans. This is all money. After he finished writing, he saved it. Before he changed it, he refreshed his Weibo and was stunned to see that messages that at him were popping up like bamboo shoots after a rain. There were already over 1,000 of them. Onlookers take the front row. You have to keep your word. Don't be a coward if you're a man. I believe you're a man of your word. Head turning left and right, don't play dead. What's going on? All-knowing man in Jianghu continued reading, shocked and frightened. He studied carefully for a while and realized that a few minutes ago, a celebrity with a large number of fans, Mo Jingting, posted a video and added a sentence with a cat head emoji, becoming an inhuman mighty one after practicing martial arts for less than 2 years. Junior Master is awesome. You're my idol. All-knowing man in Jianghu turned pale and buffered the video in a daze. As expected, it was the scene of Lu Cheng and Muko Yamashita exchanging their first blow. The transformation was obvious at a glance. All-knowing man in Jianghu trembled violently and almost fainted. He was in a daze for a full 5 minutes with a terrible expression. He stood up and started to walk around the room like an ant on a hot pan. He kept muttering to himself in a low voice, "Are you guys trying to force me to my death? Are you guys trying to force me to my death?" After a while, he sat down with a face full of grief and hatred. He couldn't pretend that he didn't see anything anymore. His current fans were all attracted by the hype. If he didn't keep his promise, he would definitely be despised by them. Soon, no one would care about him anymore, all-knowing man in Jianghu, deleted his previous long Weibo post as though his parents had passed away. He retyped some new content and said, "Alright, I admit that I am a heavenly martial artist. Alright, I admit that Lu Cheng is the heavenly son of the era. I'll also fulfill my end of the bet and delete this account. I'll put this post at the top of the Weibo post for a week as a statement. When the time comes, I'll officially delete this account. Those who want to continue learning about martial arts gossip and listen to my analysis of matches can follow the public number XXXXX. Phew, a week should be enough to attract quite a number of people, right?" All-knowing man in Jianghu clicked send and leaned against the back of the chair, exhausted. After that, he logged into the platform and kept looking at the increase in the number of followers. However, it was still very small. After the trending wave of the topic, it was nearing a stop. It's over, it's over. All-knowing man in Jianghu seemed to have seen stacks of cash grow wings and fly away from him. He closed his eyes and lay paralyzed on the sofa. In the passenger seat of the moving car, Yenjika made use of the time on the road to watch the battle between her Cheng and Muko Yamashita anxiously and excitedly browse through the forum to see all-knowing man in Jianghu's Weibo post. The more she read, the brighter her smile became. In the end, she even spoke in a clear voice. Hearing this, the dance stage mighty one Du Yan who was driving turned her head to take a look. Recalling the screen she saw from the corner of her eyes, she asked, half sighing and half enviously, "Is that guy in the competition your boyfriend? How old is he and he has already started to transform?" "I think his name is Lu Cheng. I have been practicing martial arts for many years. Until now, the inhuman stage is still a fantasy." "Yeah," Yenjika pursed her lips and nodded lightly. Her eyes moved as she quietly added in her heart, "Actually, he's not my boyfriend anymore." In the arena, seeing Muko Yamashita struggling to stand up, Lu Cheng had mixed feelings for a moment. In the battle just now, he won because of his courage. If he was scared by Muko Yamashita's wholeness formula and became depressed and dispirited, he would not dare to counterattack. If they continued to fight, he would have no choice but to be dragged to his death by Muko Yamashita and swallow the bitter fruit of defeat. To be honest, he was a little arrogant before the match. He felt that as long as he continued to perform like before, relying on the improvement and surprise brought about by the transformation, he would have a 50% chance of winning the battle with Muko Yamashita. But reality taught him that he was not the only one who could surprise others. Others could do it too. Phew, things like pride and arrogance were not things that would not happen again in the future just because one had reflected on it in the past. They would appear frequently as one's strength increased and one's encounters increased. That was why the ancients said, "Reflect on yourself 3 times a day." Lu Cheng's emotions settled down and the excitement caused by the breakthrough lessened a little. Amidst the cheers of Lu Cheng from the crowd, he exchanged a bow with Muko Yamashita who had finally stood firm. Turning around, he walked down the stone steps. Only then did he completely recover from the battle. His heart was brimming with uncontrollable joy. "I won. I won against the 5th seed. I won against an inhuman stage mighty one." He quickened his pace and couldn't wait to return to his original position. His target was in Chaoyang, no, the phone in and Chaoyang's hand. Chapter 471. Just as Lu Cheng was making his way back, barefooted, more than half of the lights in the Xinxiang Stadium suddenly went out, leaving only the area between the arena and the Chinese delegation. A dreamy and radiant path was formed in the darkness, complementing the shouts of Lu Cheng, around him. This was a reward for the victor. This was a tribute to the hero who had defeated the stronger as the weak. Lu Cheng's mood was getting better, and his footsteps became lighter and lighter. It was as if he had returned to Songqing University's martial arts arena. He began to raise his hand high and applaud. The cheers grew louder until he set foot on the grandstand, and the light was restored. Not bad. Peng Liyun had restrained his competitive attitude. He reached out with a smile and high-fived his teammate. It's up to you. Lu Qing didn't hide his joy. After high-fiving Renli, and Chaoyang and Zhong Ningtao, he hurriedly took back his phone and logged into QQ. Yan Zhika had already sent him a message with a thumbs-up emoji, saying, "You didn't let me down." Lu Qing couldn't help but smile. He felt that his good mood seemed to have doubled. He hurriedly raised his eyebrows and smiled evilly. "Then what's the reward, Coach Yan? I'll personally make you a cake, won't I?" Yan Zhika replied with an emoji of a little monster licking ice cream. "Look, the follow-up rewards include making waffles and other small biscuits. It's enough for you to win the championship," Yan Zhika said smugly. "Look, the follow-up rewards include making waffles and other small biscuits." Lu Qing broke into laughter and was momentarily speechless. What his wife said made sense. After a few seconds, he said blankly, "This is different from the reward I imagined. What kind of reward did you imagine?" Yan Zhika seemed to be asking reasonably, but she added an emoji of, "Say it, I'll kill you if you say it." Lu Qing shook his head. His lips curled up as he fearlessly replied, "Cough, for example, a couple returning home. What would a couple do after returning home?" Hee hee. You tainted a good song line again. Yan Zhika realized that she understood instantly. She couldn't help but sigh and reprimand him. "What are you talking about? Why can't I understand?" Lu Qing replied in the usual tone of a girl playing dumb, accompanied by an "I'm very pure" emoji. Yan Zhika was speechless, feeling both angry and amused at the same time. She felt that her Cheng was becoming more and more thick-skinned. Then she sent an emoji of blowing a red card and said, "Leave. I don't have a disciple like you." While Lu Qing lowered his head, smiling as he typed and chatted, Renli took a deep look at him. She felt that at this moment, his smile was gentle and all his wariness was gone. He was not like usual. When he talked to girls, he would be polite and distant. Was this the real him? Or both sides of the contradiction? At the Japanese delegation, Moko Yamashita refused to be helped. He walked back with great difficulty on his own and said to the people around him in a deep voice, "I will remember this day. I will wash away this shame." The expressions of the other samurais turned solemn as they solemnly witnessed Moko Yamashita's oath. This was the tradition of the extreme Hada sect. Of course, if you lose in the arena, you will have to stand up again. After the matter calmed down, the researcher with messy hair looked at the renovated arena and said to the leader impatiently, "We have to think of another way." On the other side, Lu Qing was chatting happily, sharing the joy of defeating an inhuman strong opponent with Yan Zhika. But not long after, Yan Zhika sent an emoji of whisper with a hand over your mouth, and said, "Class is starting." This meant that she could take 10, 20, or even 30 or 40 minutes to reply to a message. This meant that Lu Qing, who was in high spirits, had to restrain himself and shift his attention to other things. Although he completely understood, Lu Qing was still a little disappointed. He couldn't help but take a deep breath and look at the tattered arena. Soon, he shifted his gaze again and replied with an optimistic and humorous tone, "Yes, yes. Study hard and improve every day." After sending, he was stunned for a few seconds. Then he remembered something else and quickly switched to the contact list. He found the profile picture of the military contact, Rapid March. He clicked on it and quickly typed a few words. "Moko Yamashita from Japan's Extreme Hadu sect knows the wholeness formula. Roger." Rapid March seemed to always be online. Or maybe he's not alone. Lu Cheng's thoughts drifted. It was best to leave the matter of the wholeness formula to the military. He didn't have that many resources and manpower. Being a martial artist didn't mean that he had to do everything himself. If he had the help of powerful forces, it would be a waste not to use them. After temporarily putting this matter aside, Lu Qing finally had the time to look at other messages and messages. He found that the juniors of the Ice God sect, represented by his martial nephew Mo Jingting, had all sent congratulatory messages. They either jokingly congratulated their junior martial uncle for his great achievement in martial arts or solemnly congratulated him for his transformation to the inhuman stage. An inhuman expert under the age of 21 could be ranked in the top 10 in the entire history of the Ice God sect. Apart from Lu Cheng, 5 of the remaining 9 had made the great leap and become physical invulnerability experts. More than half of them had made the great leap. Considering the threshold of instant success, this was a very high probability. Lu Cheng had already learned from Yan Zhike that Mo Jingting had purposely posted on Weibo, forcing all-knowing man in ganghood to step up and fulfill the bet. Hence, he replied politely with a "thank you." After dealing with these matters, he secretly looked at all-knowing man in ganghood's Weibo and browsed the forum. He found that An Chaoyang had almost been exposed. He couldn't help but sigh that this guy wasn't very reliable. Although he had embarrassed himself a few times, overall, he was still the most reliable one. Just as the arena was undergoing emergency repairs, the other arena was ready. The second match of the quarter-finals was about to begin. Suddenly, Lu Cheng felt something. He raised his head and looked at the aisle. He saw a woman in a suit walking over leisurely, staring at him without hiding anything. Beside her were 2 men in staff attire. She looked like a mix of Xinjiang and Western descent. Her facial features were exquisite and elegant. She was in her 30s and had a mature charm. "Hello, I'm Catherine, a reporter from Fulua TV station. Can I do an interview with you?" The woman's smile was like a spring breeze. Her English was perfect. During this period, Lu Cheng had often encountered English with a heavy accent. He could barely understand a few words and often suspected that he was illiterate. He had studied for 3 years of compulsory education, 3 years of high school, and 2 years of university for nothing. Now that he suddenly encountered a language that he could almost understand, he was moved. Indeed, the one at fault wasn't me, but the others from Xinjiang. Without waiting for him to speak, Zhong Ningtao beside him spoke in fluent English. "Sure, Miss Catherine. Where are your credentials and your camera team? When it comes to negotiations, it's still up to the leader." Lu Cheng and the rest looked at each other and thought to themselves. Catherine took out her credentials and passed it to Zhong Ningtao. She smiled and said, "This is an impromptu interview. I don't have a camera team." Lu Cheng's performance just now was very good. Everyone liked it, including me. I would like to know more. Originally, such interviews weren't arranged for the wild card team. "Thank you, Miss Catherine. You can ask your questions now. You have 5 minutes. Zhong Ningtao looked at his watch and said with a smile, "I'll do the translation and communication." After receiving the press credentials, Catherine looked at Lu Cheng and asked with a smile, "Hello, Mr. Lu. You don't seem very old. From your information, I think you're only 20 years and 6 months old." Although Lu Cheng could understand, he still waited for Zhong Ningtao to finish translating before replying in Chinese. "Yes, still half a year away from 21. After listening to Zhong Ningtao's translation, Catherine continued asking with interest, "Then what's your current occupation? Have you entered the professional martial arts circle?" Lu Cheng answered frankly, "I'm still studying. I'm still a student." "Oh, you're still a student? You can already set up your own martial arts club in Xinjiang and have a lot of followers." Catherine couldn't hide her surprise. With the strength that Lu Cheng had displayed, he was already a representative of a major sect in Xinjiang. He was qualified to be called a master. But he was still a student. Lu Cheng held back his laughter and waited for Zhong Ningtao to complete the procedures before pointing at Peng Liyun and Ren Li. "Is it strange to be a student? They're still students and haven't graduated." At this point, he couldn't help but complain, "If you're a reporter from Japan, you won't be surprised. Over there, the ones who save the world are all students. After saving the world, they have to go back to school." The leader probably couldn't translate such words, so it didn't hurt to say it. As expected, while Peng Liyun and the rest laughed, Zhong Ningtao only translated the first half of the sentence. Oh, that's really strange. Is this the latest trend in China? Catherine exclaimed in shock. After calming down, she asked Lu Qing about other things, such as how long he had been practicing martial arts and what competitions he had participated in. She received even more shocking answers. 5 minutes passed quickly. She looked at her watch, exhaled, and said with a bright smile, "You're really an amazing person. It's an honor to interview you." "Thank you." Lu Qing smiled. In the interview just now, with the leaders filtering, he could answer however he wanted and fully displayed his ability to complain. Catherine waved goodbye. Just as she was about to turn around, she suddenly smiled sweetly and said, "Actually, I know Chinese. My maternal grandmother is a very knowledgeable Chinese. However, when we interview, we have to use English or Xinjiang language." Ah! Lu Qing was stunned at first, then his face turned red. "So you actually understood everything I said just now? Then didn't I just perform a live stand-up comedy?" As Catherine left, unrestrained laughter sounded around him. It came from Peng Liyun, and Chaoyang, Renli, and Zhong Ningtao. "Damn it, it's all because of Xiaoming. How embarrassing." Lu Qing covered his face and sighed. After Vagar and Banam easily defeated their opponents in less than 2 minutes, the fourth match was about to begin. Peng Liyun versus the third seed, Waku, an ascetic monk who practiced the arhat fruit. Chapter 472. The Theravada sect belonged to one of the branches of primitive Buddhism, commonly known as Hinayana Buddhism. Of course, they would never call themselves that and hated others calling them that. They were also against the so-called Mahayana Buddhism of cultivating the Bodhisattva Tao. According to the views of the 3 Semitic sects, heresy was more detestable than heretics. This sect followed strict precepts, followed the traditions, and practiced asceticism. With the 16 insight wisdom and for holy truths as the core, they cultivated the arhat fruit. Arhats were also known as self-attaining arhats. They lacked the desire to deliver all living beings. On the basis of recognizing that the world was bitter and all things were illusory, they only sought for personal liberation. On the other hand, before completely transcending samsara, they were all very strong individually, especially in terms of spirit. They were even stronger than their peers. Waku was such a monk. He had cultivated the 16 insight wisdom to the 11th wisdom, Xingsa wisdom. He recognized the emptiness of the body and mind and no longer had any attachment to it. He was filled with indifference and alienation. His spirit was in an extraordinary state and his strength was terrifying. The fact that he was ranked as the 3rd seed was proof of that. He wouldn't be much weaker than Peng Liyun. Lu Qing thought to himself. Various situations regarding Waku flashed across his mind. At this moment, he heard the sound of the broadcast. He saw Peng Liyun standing up slowly. His eyes were focused and no longer wandering. Smiling to himself, Lu Qing clenched his fist and shouted, "All the best." "Yeah." Peng Liyun responded with a fist bump. His muscles and fascia were trembling slightly. It was enough to show how excited he was. Seeing this, Lu Qing didn't know why, but he felt like mourning for Waku for 5 seconds. The first machine of Shangqing sect had finished charging. After bumping fists with Renli, and Chaoyang, and Zhong Ningtao, Peng Liyun turned around and walked towards the arena. With every step he took, his surroundings seemed to become darker and more oppressive. It was as though lead clouds were about to form. Thunderclaps could be heard, sweeping away all disharmony in the world. Such power seemed to have materialized and was comparable to an experienced inhuman. However, Waku's expression didn't change. He was still full of disgust, but his eyes were deeper. It was as though he had seen through the emptiness around him and wasn't affected at all. Peng Liyun was neither disappointed nor dejected by this. Instead, bright lights converged within his eyes like lightning that was about to strike down, and his battle intent grew denser. When the two of them stood in their predetermined positions, the referee didn't delay. He raised his right hand and waved it down fiercely. Begin. Peng Liyun lowered his waist and condensed his qi and blood. His body immediately bounced up like a cloud and flew out. However, what accompanied this light leap forward was a loud bang and the violent shaking of the arena, causing Waku's body to sway. His flash strike was no longer the same as before. In a flash, Peng Liyun appeared in front of Waku. He shook his right arm and turned it into a huge hammer. Along with the sizzling silvery white lightning, he swung it towards his opponent fiercely. Waku didn't move from beginning to end. He didn't even try to control the shaking of his body. Facing Peng Liyun's hammer, he sighed softly. He simply took a step forward and straightened his leg to welcome the punch. With a bang, the disgust and abandonment in his eyes grew denser. His skinny body seemed to be filled with air, and his sallow skin turned golden. His fist accurately landed on his opponent's wrist. Sizzle. Silver light danced. Waku seemed to have touched the socket with his bare hands. His body trembled and couldn't continue with the following actions. However, his expression and gaze didn't change at all. It was as though he wasn't the one who was shocked. On the other hand, Peng Liyun instantly felt various kinds of discomfort. It was as though he was being exposed to the sun and rain, suffering from unbearable hunger, and suffering from the various kinds of pain caused by lack of water. This made him slow down for a while before he returned to the battle. He wasn't able to seize the opportunity when Waku lost control of his body temporarily. Heart Reflection Fist, a secret fist technique of the Ascendant sect. Using one's heart to reflect the other's heart, allowing the other to experience various kinds of feelings that one had experienced before. At this moment, the radiance in Peng Liyun's eyes gathered again, as though it had illuminated the surroundings. The visualization in his mind changed and condensed into a green jade talisman that was suspended in the air. On it, there were lightning patterns that intertwined to form complex seal words. Bam! He straightened his body and his muscles swelled. Without dodging, he took a step forward and extended his body. He clenched his fist and struck. Thunder Sect's simplified physical invulnerability, Thunder Seal. Seeing this, Lu Qing couldn't help but be speechless. He scolded jokingly, "He's fooling around again." Since he knew the uniqueness of the Heart Reflection Fist, Peng Liyun's best choice was to follow the momentum of the Machine Fist, driven by the Dan force, and launch a flurry of attacks, not giving Waku the opportunity to reflect the other's heart. However, he was now using a simplified physical invulnerability to attack head-on without dodging the needle. Other than wanting to experience more of the wonders of the Heart Reflection Fist, there was no other explanation. Facing an expert who was also at the inhuman level, he actually dared to let his opponent use all his strength. "You used the word frivolous well." And Chaoyang, who was cold on the outside but gentle on the inside, nodded in agreement. Renli, on the other hand, was puzzled as she looked at the field. She suspected that Peng Liyun had a deeper motive behind not making the best response. Yes, that must be it. Lu Qing shook his head and laughed again. "What if he loses by fooling around? What else can we do? Anyway, you are already in the top 8, Renli is 90% sure and Chaoyang has a chance too. Eliminating one would be giving face to the host." Zhong Ningtao wasn't nervous at all as he laughed. Furthermore, this can teach Peng Liyun a lesson so that he won't dare to be arrogant in the future. Isn't that great? Do you think that's possible? Lu Qing didn't look at the leader and looked at Chaoyang. Would the great demon king accept such a lesson? I don't think it's possible. Chaoyang sighed. Me too. Lu Qing followed suit and sighed. While they were talking, the situation on the arena had changed. Facing Peng Liyun's Thunder Seal, Waku didn't try to avoid it. His eyes showed that he had seen through the vicissitudes of life. A faint golden light surrounded his body. Then, he flicked his arm, clenched his fist and swung it upwards. Strength against strength, strength against strength. Boom! Their fists collided. Gold and green intersected. Muscles and veins were exposed. A sudden buzzing sound exploded in mid-air, as if there was a thunderous explosion. Peng Liyun's vision turned dark. His soul reflected back inexplicably. He felt the aging of his body and the obvious weakness that grew with time. To an expert who was used to relying on himself to use martial arts, this was the cruelest and most painful thing. The strength that he had gained through hard work for most of his life was gradually lost because of his aging body. In the end, there was nothing left. Even a half-grown kid who had just entered the martial arts world might not be able to subdue him. How feeble, how desolate it was. Heart reflection punch, old. A move that was the opposite of the previous, bitter. Although Peng Liyun was in his prime and couldn't really understand this kind of sorrow, being in the Shangqing sect, he had seen the pain of his elders when they were old. He had seen the painful moans of his elders when they were old. He had seen the helplessness of being paralyzed on the bed before death. He had long felt the same way. Now that Waku had poured all the experiences of aging into his mind, it triggered his memories. The fear that was buried deep in his heart suddenly exploded. In an instant, he was stunned on the spot. His face was dripping with cold sweat. It was as if he had fallen into a nightmare and couldn't wake up. He didn't even think of forming the Thunder God statue to suppress his soul. Under his punch, Waku's sleeves were torn. His arm that was glowing with golden light was charred black. His whole body kept twitching and was completely paralyzed. He also didn't know what was going on. However, he had worked hard to train his body. He had an extremely strong resistance to pain, burns, and lightning strikes. He was the first to recover. With a bitter expression, he turned his back and punched with his left fist. Seeing that Peng Liyun's already smoothed fist was about to hit his opponent's throat, for some reason, Peng Liyun seemed to have received a double shock. He suddenly woke up from his old nightmare. His eyes regained their luster and gathered the essence of life, creating a white haze in his eyes. The whirlpool in his body was spinning crazily. The sound of a motor reverberated in the surroundings. In front of Waku's fist, it turned into a piece of paper. It was blown backwards by the wind pressure, and just happened to avoid that fatal blow. This was a very simple application of the attraction of yin and yang and the repulsion of the same poles. In the two electric shocks, just now, Peng Liyun used his extremely strong control and the core technique of the Thunder Sect's magnet sect to place a layer of electric charge on the surface of Waku's body that could be maintained for a few seconds. It was exactly the same as the electric charge on the surface of his body. Therefore, when his opponent attacked, he was affected and stacked with the absolute reaction. With this, he was able to get rid of the feeling from the heart reflection punch and use the magnet sex technique in time to salvage the situation. Waku wasn't depressed. The heart reflection punch turned again and displayed the killer move of this technique, 6 paths of reincarnation punch. From his point of view, the 6 paths of reincarnation didn't only exist in the Buddhist scriptures. It also existed in the world. It wasn't an illusory thing, but a reflection of the human heart. Among them, the path of the hungry ghost was another name for unrestrained greed. The path of the beast was another name for unable to control one's instincts. The path of Asura was the bloodthirsty and violent desire in everyone's body. The path of humanity was the manifestation of karma entanglement of love and hatred. The path of hell was the extreme of humanity. It embodied the pain and torment caused by love, hatred, jealousy and so on. It was the 2 sides of humanity. The path of heaven referred to the state of mind of a Buddhist who had achieved success in his cultivation. He had distanced himself from the rest of the 5 paths and obtained peace and freedom. However, this state of mind had not completely transcended and had not jumped out of the cycle of reincarnation. At any time, he could be affected by karma and be controlled by his emotions, falling back into pain again. As the saying goes, one thought of peace, one thought of hell. The 6 paths of reincarnation, the various manifestations of the mortal world. A layer of golden light appeared in Waku's eyes. It was dark and gloomy, seducing the soul and causing the heart to sink. Bam! He raised his fist from his waist, bringing out a clear and crisp sound. There wasn't any other phenomenon. The path of the hungry ghost, of the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Peng Liyun punched out again and used the fiery thunderbolt to block this move. However, he didn't experience the feeling of suffering and aging like before. Therefore, he didn't care and started to attack first. However, unknowingly, he was getting more and more impatient as he fought. He was ignoring the situation and environment more and more. It was as if he wanted to eat his fill in one go and wanted to find the flaws of his opponent as soon as possible. Waku patiently defended. He used both his fists and legs and occasionally used the path of the hungry ghost. He defended steadily. Other than his skin being charred black and his body being paralyzed, he didn't show any other symptoms. As they fought fiercely to the edge of the arena. As Waku moved his body to the side, Peng Liyun's body fell forward and almost fell down. His back swayed and he suddenly woke up. He felt that his state of mind was different. He quickly visualized the Thor's statue of the purest yang and suppressed all the distracting thoughts. When Waku saw this, the golden light in his eyes suddenly turned red and turned into a thick blood-red color. The 6 paths of reincarnation fist could also be used on himself. Arhat with one thought, Azura with one thought. Kacha! Waku's body seemed to have expanded and became taller by a few centimeters. His muscles were bulging and he charged towards Peng Liyun with full strength, wanting to knock him off the arena directly. At this point, it was already too late to wake up. Chapter 473. The distance between them was less than 2 steps. With Waku's speed after transforming into Azura, it would only take a split second for him to get close to Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng had nowhere to hide. Peng Liyun, who had suppressed his impatience, only did one thing, which was to jump up. He jumped up in a weird posture and stretched his body backwards as if he was jumping horizontally in midair. This was the only way for him to avoid the Azura strike. If he jumped up, down, or forward, he would definitely not be able to dodge in time below his chest and would definitely be hit by Waku. Even if his bones were not broken, he would still be pushed out of the arena by the ferocious force and would not be able to turn the situation around. Of course, his current actions were only to avoid the initial collision. How could Waku not have subsequent changes and connections? Bam! Waku's body sank and broke through the air barrier. He stopped at the edge of the arena. His eyes were bloodshot. He bent his legs and was about to take the opportunity to throw a punch upwards. He soared into the sky and fell. At this moment, Peng Liyun, who was in mid-air, had a bright glow in his eyes. It was as if lightning was striking down. His palms suddenly clapped together as if he was clapping. Boom! If it was any other martial artist, they would definitely feel their minds shaking and their actions would definitely slow down. However, Waku had already transformed into a violent and bloodthirsty, fighting machine. He was filled with such desires and could no longer be clear-headed and rational. He had to wait for the effects of the fist to fade before he could return to the path of the heavenly immortals. Therefore, although his mind was shaken, his body moved instinctively and was not affected at all. He had already punched upwards. This was also the reason why he had to use the path of the Azura on himself in the end. He had to eliminate external disturbances and end the battle quickly without leaving any chances. In the midst of the lightning, Peng Liyun, who was about to land, separated his palms and pulled out an extremely thin, silver-white electric light. When the electric light appeared, it instantly slashed onto Waku's body. It slashed his body and caused his clothes and skin to emit green smoke. During this moment, Peng Liyun visualized many thick thunderclouds in his mind. They stacked on top of each other and had a total of 9 layers. They were filled with extreme yang and violence. This seemed to complement the heaven's punishment. Rumble. There was another deafening roar of thunder. A silvery white bolt of lightning struck down like a shortened version of lightning. However, if one looked closely, they would find that it was Pengliyun, whose entire arm was wrapped in lightning, stretching his body. He unleashed his Dan force and swung it in the air like a punishment from heaven. Bang! Their fists collided. One's muscles bulged, his blood vessels protruded, and his veins popped. The other's electric snakes danced, as if it was caught in a net. Crack! Waku, who had transformed into an Azura, landed on both of his feet and sank into the ground. His body trembled again and his muscles twitched uncontrollably. Pengliyun bounced up a little before landing again. He bent his leg in mid-air and struck out with his knee covered in bright electric sparks, aiming straight for his opponent's chest. Rumble! Amidst the thunderous roar, Waku raised his left arm and placed it in front of his body. He used his strength to block the fatal knee strike. He then flipped backwards and threw his opponent out, avoiding the following consecutive kicks. The part of his arm that was hit by the knee was charred black. There was a burnt smell and it was trembling non-stop. Seeing that he was about to be thrown out of the arena, Pengliyun suddenly retracted his blood and chi. He did a somersault and straightened his right leg. Electric sparks surrounded it as he chopped down with his battle axe. Rumble! 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 He was like a sparrowhawk. He constantly borrowed the force to fly up and attack while landing. He would punch, elbow, knee, kick, or even turn his entire body into heaven's punishment lightning and fling it out. He was fighting fiercely with Azura Waku at the edge of the arena. He was walking on the line of defeat. Rumble! 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 In the eyes of Lu Cheng and the rest, there seemed to be silvery white lightning striking down continuously on the arena. There were 9 consecutive strikes, each brighter than the previous one. It was like the legendary Heaven's Punishment. 9 Heavens Ensemble. And Chaoyang blurted out. This was the 7th move of the Thunder Sect, a unique physical invulnerability skill. No. Renli shook her head. It should be the Dan stage martial arts that he created by imitating. Lu Cheng, who was at the side, was filled with emotions. He admired Pengliyun from the bottom of his heart. He relied on the Jin Dan to barely catch up with Pengliyun in 2 years. However, in other aspects of martial arts, there was still a big gap between him and Pengliyun. Pengliyun was already able to imitate the unique skills of his predecessors and create his own moves. He was still in the process of learning and mastering them. This was due to both accumulation and talent. He needed to be like the Dragon King. He had to be more hardworking, more proficient, more knowledgeable, and more challenging opponents to make up for and catch up. Rumble! 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 After 9 strikes, Waku's entire body was numb. His muscles were trembling and the blood in his eyes faded. He woke up from the Azura path and instinctively took 2 steps back. With this step back, Pengliyun finally landed on the ground. He used Dan Force to activate Machine Punch and seized the opportunity when Waku was recovering from the 6 paths of reincarnation. He threw out punches that left afterimages behind. Using his footsteps as a pivot, he changed his position from time to time, causing Waku to be flustered. Da-da-da-da-da. Pengliyun moved his joints and tendons. He didn't stop attacking. Finally, Waku's movements became sluggish due to the accumulation of numbness. Pengliyun continued to attack and opened up his stance. He stretched out his hand and pressed on the surface of his body. Bzz. The lightning snake shone brightly. Waku seemed to have been hit by high-voltage electricity and was sent flying. His skin was charred in many places. Thump. He, who was originally at the edge of the arena, landed on the surrounding area. His limbs were twitching and white foam was coming out from the corner of his mouth. Pengliyun stopped his actions. His face was dripping with sweat. His mouth opened and closed continuously as he panted. His eyes were filled with excitement and fatigue. He was almost at his limit. The referee glanced at him and raised his right hand. He announced loudly, Peng Liyun wins. The crowd let out a huge sigh, mixed with some cursing and scolding. The biggest hope of the host was destroyed just like that. Lu Cheng was amazed and speechless. He couldn't help but laugh at An Chaoyang, Ren Li, and Zhong Ningtao. I thought he was going to be reckless today. Me too. An Chaoyang agreed with a sigh. At this moment, Peng Liyun had slightly regained his breath. Seeing Waku being helped away, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, what a pity that he didn't get to witness the wonders of the other 4 moves of the reincarnation punch. He turned around and walked back to the spectator stand with slightly weak steps. He walked to the front of Lu Cheng and the rest and gave them a high five to celebrate. After doing all this, he laughed at himself and said, I almost lost just now. Hearing this, Lu Cheng and An Chaoyang looked at each other and burst out laughing. He really almost lost. What's wrong? Peng Liyun looked at them blankly. It's nothing, Lu Cheng answered without hesitation. He added, keep it up. Continue to be reckless. The more reckless you are when you meet me, the better. At this point, the first 4 groups of the top 16 had finished their matches. Lu Cheng and the rest followed Zhong Ningtao back to the hotel. As 2 of them had to prepare for the next day's match and 2 of them were almost exhausted, they didn't think of going out for a stroll or supper. They went back to their own rooms obediently, which disappointed some of the people who were watching them. After washing up, Lu Cheng reported the result of the battle to his mother and chatted with Yan Zhike for a while. Finally, he couldn't bear the mental fatigue and said goodnight in advance. He fell asleep without doing the concealment of spirit and qi. In a daze, he felt like he was back in the provincial youth tournament. He had just defeated Zhang Zhutong and was drained of energy. He had a headache and nausea. He had to hurry up and recover in order to prepare for the finals. In a daze, he seemed to be leaning on Yan Zhike's supple thighs again. She was massaging his head with moderate strength. There was a familiar smell at the tip of his nose and a voice that seemed to come from the heavens sounded in his ears. When you're old and your hair is white, the voice sounded and faded. Lu Cheng suddenly woke up and saw the ceiling in the dark. It was quiet all around. He was the only one in the dark. He looked at his phone and found that it was only 2 in the morning. He felt an inexplicable sense of loss. He took a deep breath and didn't disturb her. Concealment of spirit and qi, he went back to sleep. The next day, he woke up on time before dawn. He had regained his energy and chatted with Yan Zhike energetically. He continued the training of the metamorphosis stage and felt that his body was getting stronger little by little. In the evening, the first 4 groups of the top 16 started their matches. Ren Li, stimulated by Lu Cheng and Peng Liyun yesterday, performed extremely well and defeated her opponent easily. She and Kori Karasawa advanced to the top 8. However, An Chaoyang, who was the last to fight, was in trouble. His opponent was Waku's junior, number 6 seed, Gusai. Even though he had yet to reach the level of walking disappearing wisdom, he had an extremely strong physique. Coupled with the heart reflection fist and other techniques, his combat power was equivalent to that of an inhuman. Furthermore, the martial arts that attacked one's soul was a counter to An Chaoyang's greatest reliance, lake and mirror wisdom. This caused An Chaoyang to quickly fall into a passive state. Chapter 474. Bam, bam, bam. Every punch and kick of Gusai contained an exaggerated amount of power. Instead of making a crisp sound, they continuously exploded the air, creating a commotion similar to that of a dance stage martial artist like An Chaoyang. During this process, the plump Gusai didn't appear clumsy at all. Instead, he was as agile as a leopard cat, jumping up and down, moving back and forth, seizing the upper hand. An Chaoyang had to divert some of his attention to maintain the lake and mirrored wisdom to resist the hunger, thirst, exposure to the sun, and pain brought about by his opponent's heart reflection punch. He fell into a passive state, relying on his preemptive senses, judgment, and continuous outbursts to barely hold on and not show any signs of defeat. After a series of frenzied attacks, Gusai saw that he couldn't take down his opponent. The look in his eyes changed, revealing the vicissitudes of life, like an old man going through the final stages of his life. It made people feel the same way, thinking of their own inevitable ending. Heart reflection punch, old. Gusai's fist technique changed, no longer creating the slightest sound of wind, but filled with the desolation of the setting sun. Bam! And Chaoyang pushed his feet inward, moved his knees, twisted his body, swung his arms, and punched out his right fist. It collided with Gusai's bull-sized fist, creating a dull sound and setting off a gust of wind in all directions. As his arm bounced back, he suddenly felt that his energy was insufficient and his body was weak. It was as if he was watching himself gradually grow old and weak. His skin was shriveled, lost its luster, and became wrinkled. He did not even want to take a look at it, for fear that he would have a nightmare because of it. As an artistic youth who liked to read novels and listen to love songs, and Chaoyang's heart was undoubtedly very delicate. He often felt sentimental about the passing of spring, and sometimes he would think of growing old. Now that he was truly experiencing aging, he couldn't control himself. Fortunately, his tranquil soul was only stirred up by the storm, and the round mirror was not broken because of it. Fortunately, he was still young, and his elders were still around. Before he joined the Shanghai Club, there were very few old people who practiced martial arts around him. He lacked deep feelings for such things. Only then did he manage to stabilize his emotions and suppress the storm. He did not break out in cold sweat like Peng Liyun. He even took the opportunity to take a deep breath, gather his qi and blood, and counterattacked with explosive force, trying to set off a torrential momentum. Gusai's pupils constricted. He didn't dare to be careless. The fats on his body bulged out, becoming chiseled. A terrifying explosive force and a flickering dark golden luster erupted. With a swing of the demon-subduing pestle, he forcefully broke in Chaoyang's follow-up attack. He knew that his biggest problem was the heavy burden and the high consumption of energy. His body was prone to overload. Before he mastered Xing Shi Ji and stepped into the so-called inhuman level in China, he couldn't fight for a long time. Therefore, he made corresponding preparations. He planned to force his opponent to take his Fist of the Six Paths of Reincarnation head-on when he had the upper hand. Bam, bam, bam. After another round of heart seal punch and physical strength, Gusai finally found his chance. A dark golden luster appeared in his eyes. Under the light, his fist seemed to be dyed with a colorful halo. With the flowing 5 skandhas, he swung his arm in the opposite direction and hit his opponent. Fist of the Six Paths of Reincarnation, the Path of Man. And Chaoyang was forced to the point where he couldn't dodge. He could only immerse his mind into the mirror-like lake of tranquility, and shake out his arm to block the fist. Bam! The dull sound was like a drum beating on his heart. And Chaoyang suddenly heard a song that he hadn't listened to in a long time. After an entire summer, the sadness didn't get any better. Driving on the endless road, I feel like I'm leaving myself. It was a sad melody that he would repeatedly listen to in high school when he was in junior high. Often, he would feel so sad that he couldn't control himself. That year, that month, his childhood sweetheart said to him, "Sorry, I still can't find the feeling, let's just be friends." Becoming better was the key to winning a girl's heart. But even if you became better, the girl might not fall for you. When they were young, the two of them could hold an umbrella and run in a rainstorm, drenching each other but laughing freely. But when they grew up, they could only nod at each other and greet each other when they passed each other. They were so indifferent that it was as if they didn't have many entanglements. Because of the loss of this relationship, he had once listened to songs night after night, blurring his vision and grieving his heart. From then on, he fell in love with loneliness, the feeling of being immersed in his own world, and the beautiful yet painful lyrics of the song. "It's a pity that it wasn't you who stayed with me until the end, another old song floated over. And Chaoyang was filled with disappointment. He felt that the wound that had healed long ago was clearly exposed again. It was no longer bloody, but it still hurt when touched. Because of this, he lost control of his emotions. He wanted to drink, he wanted to sing, he wanted to vent. This reminded him of a song that he had been listening to frequently during this period of time. It was an old song that he only found out about recently because of a program. That old and hoarse voice of a man, every word struck his heart. Like the waning moon or the ebbing tide of the sea, a piece of my heart was torn away by you. After so many years, the regret is still there, there is a kind of wound that will never heal. That's right, how could he forget that kind of regret? That was his entire youth. That was an entire part of his past life. I used a heavy snow to cover it up, to bury the lost love deep in my heart. Every time I say that my feelings are still blank, no one can tell that I'm lamenting. The melody was sorrowful, and the song entered his heart. And Chaoyang's heart was quickly emptied. Regret surged and broke through the dam. The lake and mirrored wisdom could no longer be maintained. With a crack, it broke completely. His emotions were like a flood, naturally outlining his visualization. His body straightened and expanded slightly. His fist struck out gently but violently, blocking Gusai's palm that was about to land on his vitals. Gusai's palm took the opportunity to reap the victory while he was in a daze. Bam! Gusai, who had a strong physical talent, was sent flying. His eyes were filled with shock and disbelief, as though he had encountered a real flood. But he quickly realized that something was wrong. And Chaoyang didn't take the opportunity to attack again after the punch. Instead, he stood in the same spot, panting. His eyes were filled with disappointment and faint sadness. This. Gusai didn't think too much about it. He seized the opportunity and pounced forward, launching a new round of attacks. This time, Chaoyang, who didn't have the lake and mirrored wisdom, was flustered. He opened up his stance, closed in, and knocked over with an elbow strike. The referee heaved a sigh of relief and raised his hand to announce, Gusai wins. The entire stadium erupted in cheers. The host country finally had a representative in the quarterfinals. And Chaoyang didn't suffer any injuries, but his arm was a little sore. He flipped over and stood up. With a gloomy expression, he clasped his hands at Gusai and said, "Thank you." "Yes, thank you. If not for today's battle, I'm afraid it would take me a long time to understand the true meaning of a flood. If I'm still controlling my emotions, how can I talk about a flood that breaks the dam? Only when my emotions are fully released and I don't need to be calm. Only when my body and mind are united can I unleash a true flood." Unfortunately, this was a sudden understanding without much practice. After one punch, my body was drained and I lost control of my emotions. Not only did I fail to grasp the opportunity to win, I even showed signs of defeat. After finishing his sentence, Chaoyang turned around and returned to the spectator stand while Gusai looked confused. What a pity. Lu Cheng and the rest could see that he had comprehended something and almost won. They couldn't help but sigh. It's all right. And Chaoyang smiled calmly, indicating that he didn't need any consolation. At this point, the quarterfinals were all decided. The drawing of lots would begin later. There was no longer any principle of avoidance. The top 4 would be decided the day after tomorrow. While waiting, Lu Cheng and Yen Zhika chatted for a while. Both felt that at this stage, there was a high probability of drawing an inhuman mighty one. Therefore, it didn't matter. 15 minutes later, the arena was cleaned up and rearranged. After some nonsense, the first name was drawn. Miluo, Vagar. The second seed, Vagar, was a strong character who was hailed as the future overlord. Following which, the guest took out another round ball. Looking at the name, she let out a tantalizing exclamation. After a dozen seconds, she seemed to have recovered. With a sharp voice, she announced, "Japan, Kaori Karasawa. The first seed, Kaori Karasawa. The two hot favorites for this year's competition were going to meet in the quarterfinals. One of them was destined to meet his end. The atmosphere in the arena heated up. Lu Qing soon heard his name, China, Lu Qing. If I'm lucky, I'll be the only non-seed, non-wild card contestant left. If I'm unlucky, I'll be facing Peng Liyun. Lu Qing thought to himself, not changing his posture. After a few seconds, the guest drew his opponent. Showing the round ball to the crowd, she announced, Nanjing, Banam. The fourth seed, Banam. Not bad, not bad. Lu Qing heaved a sigh of relief. This wasn't bad, but it wasn't bad either. He was indeed weaker than his opponent, but it didn't mean that he had no hope of winning. At this moment, his heart suddenly stirred as a certain subtle thought appeared in his mind. There were only 4 contestants left. It wasn't impossible for such a duel to happen. While he was deep in thought, the guest had already drawn the host for the third duel. China, Peng Liyun. Then, she took out one of the 3 remaining balls. Smiling, she announced, China, Renli. Damn, it's really like this. A duel of fate. Lu Qing laughed. Beside him, Renli opened her eyes wide. Her expression was one of excitement. The quarterfinals this time was really intense. Just the thought of it made one's blood boil. There was no need to draw anymore. The host, Gusai, would be facing the non-seed, non-wild card contestant. Chapter 475. Vagar stood up as soon as the lot drawing was over. His tall and majestic figure cast a shadow around him. He pressed down on his general cap, looked at the arena and snorted. He then left the Xinxiang Stadium without looking back. In the Japanese representative team, the only remaining Kaori Karasawa clenched her fist and tapped her chin lightly. Her pink lips pouted as if she had been wronged. However, there was no emotion in her eyes. Nanjing's Banam rubbed the bandage on his hand. He turned his head and gave Lu Qing a cold stare, as though he was sizing up a dangerous prey. Then, he walked along the corridor and silently made his way to the main door. Beside Lu Qing, and Chaoyang put on his headphones again and immersed himself in the world of music. Renli glanced at Peng Liyun and took half a step away from him, as if trying to draw a line between friend and foe. From now on, we are no longer teammates. Peng Liyun, on the other hand, seemed to have thought of something. He stood there in a daze, ignoring all the gazes. Lu Qing shook his head silently. He picked up his phone and sent the matchup for the quarterfinals to Yenjika. The girls seemed to be worried about him. She replied quickly during class. Covering mouth laughing expression. I was worried about my Cheng when I saw the 4th seed after the 5th seed. However, after seeing the battle between Vagar, Kaori Karasawa, Peng Liyun and Renli, I felt that it was nothing. Happiness comes from comparison. I think so too. That's why I'm in a good mood. Lu Qing typed leisurely with a smile on his face. With that settled, Yenjika put aside her distracting thoughts and listened more attentively. Her reply speed slowed down again. Lu Qing, on the other hand, browsed the forum while waiting for Chaoyang and Renli to head to the changing room for a shower. Hey, so shady. Eternal nightfall, Yan Shaoling sighed as she drew the lot. I've never seen such an obvious shady scene. Even a primary school student like Lingling can see through it. Covering face expression, Brahman sighed. Unparalleled Dragon King laughed, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. It's normal for the host to be taken care of. In order to sell tickets, they have to get a spot in the top 4. Otherwise, why would they work so hard to organize this event? As long as the referees are not biased or blind, and there are no other problems, everything will be fine. That's right. I think this is acceptable. No matter what, the cheat team, no, our wild card team, has also secured a spot in the top 4, right? Road to the arena, said, smiling expression, this is acceptable for Lu Cheng. Although he didn't get the two weakest brothers, at least he didn't meet the strongest ones. Yes, yes. That's why I didn't scold him. I even wanted to laugh. This must be because I've helped Lu Cheng accumulate good karma. Yan Xiaoling sent a proud emoji. Okamoto's fan asked curiously, how did you do it? Everyone who participated in the discussion was interested in this question. They kept urging him to continue. Even Lu Cheng himself pretended to be a bystander and asked a question. Seeing this, Yan Xiaoling stammered, I went to watch a movie with my best friend in the afternoon. After we finished, she suggested we go for a walk. As we walked, we both realized that neither of us knew the way. You mentioned this before. You said you roared at her. Tilting head puzzled expression, Brahman asked, this has nothing to do with accumulating good karma, right? Yan Xiaoling replied, pointing fingers expression, but when I roared at her, I stepped on a pile of sh*t, ha ha ha, you've accumulated a lot of good karma. Little Nightfall, you should come when we meet next time. You're so cute, I like you so much. Wonton Seller laughed loudly. Unparalleled Dragon King teased, with your love for sh*t, shouldn't you be ecstatic? Manual funny emoji, that's a very interesting reply, a plumber eating mushrooms agreed. After a few more teasing words, Invincible Punch changed the topic and sighed, ever since Mo Jingting hung up that video, I've realized that the number of people paying attention to this King of Youth Pro League has increased. There will be more to come. Peng Liyun and Ren Li's fateful duel, Kaori Karasawa and Vagar's rivalry, and Lu Cheng's challenge to an inhuman mighty one before he completes his transformation. These are all very eye-catching matches. Any one of them would be able to support the entire top 8, not to mention there are 3 of them. Sighed the moderator, Pig Riding Knight. At this age, there aren't many matches like this. After watching the lot draw, I'm getting excited. Unparalleled Dragon King concluded. Back at the hotel, the few of them went back to their rooms without causing any trouble. Zhong Ningtao, the leader, nodded slightly in satisfaction. Although these 4 prodigies and quasi-prodigies were different from ordinary people and weren't very reliable, at least they knew their limits and listened to his orders. They were proud but not arrogant, unlike the ones he had brought before. They were young, hot-blooded, and strong. Each and every one of them was extremely bossy and domineering. If he wasn't careful, they would cause trouble. Sigh, it's true that a pot of water makes no noise, but half a pot of water makes a lot of noise. After entering the room, Lu Cheng took a pillow and placed it behind his back. While chatting with Yen Zhika, he leisurely browsed Weibo and forums, and repeatedly studied Banam's battle videos. Time passed quickly, and soon it was 10 o'clock. Suddenly, he heard knocking sounds coming from the door. Who is it? Lu Cheng shouted, got off the bed, and walked to the door with his phone. He boldly opened the door. At the door stood a girl with blonde hair. She had dark eyebrows, big eyes, and a pretty face. She wore a nightgown that only reached the middle of her thighs. Although it wasn't revealing, it perfectly accentuated her perky breasts and slender legs. She was exceptionally attractive. Her hair was half wet and stuck to her cheeks. When she saw Lu Cheng, she bit her lower lip lightly and revealed a pitiful look. She said in choppy Chinese, help me. The corner of Lu Cheng's mouth twitched, and he smiled warily. You can ask the hotel staff for help. Do you need me to call the front desk? He waved his phone and blocked the door, preventing the girl from sneaking into the room. Although this girl is pretty, it's none of my business. The girl was stunned and instinctively shook her head. When she was about to say something, Lu Cheng took a step back and mercilessly closed the door after she refused to look for the hotel staff. Clang! The girl saw the wine-red door closing quickly in front of her eyes. Her body involuntarily jerked back, and she was stunned on the spot. Behind the door, Lu Cheng unlocked the screen and excitedly shared his encounter with his wife. A girl knocked on the door just now. Yen Zhika couldn't ignore this kind of thing. Relying on her professional ninth pin skills, she carefully took out her phone and asked, "Why?" She said she was looking for me for help, and she was wearing pajamas. I asked her to look for the hotel staff directly, but she refused. So I just closed the door and locked her out. Lu Cheng proudly boasted. Well done. Yen Zhika praised him in her heart. Hands clasped under chin expression, she said, "This feels weird." Well, Cheng, you handled it very cleverly. You have to do this in the future. Lu Cheng was about to reply when he suddenly heard another knock on the door. He scratched his head and said, "What should I do? She hasn't given up yet and is still knocking. If the surrounding people find out, it'll be bad for me." Yen Zhika rolled her eyes and thought quickly. Pushing up her sunglasses expression, she said, "At this time, you need your life coach, Coach Yen, to help you. The best way to deal with this kind of situation is to not do anything and directly call the front desk, explain the situation clearly, and let them send someone to deal with it." Smart. Lu Cheng immediately realized and praised her generously. "I'll call the front desk right away." After sending this sentence, he paused and thought about how to organize the English words to describe the situation without ambiguity. He felt that it was quite difficult. So, he embarrassedly added, "How should I say it in English?" Yen Zhika almost burst out laughing. "Ha!" She said, "Come, let me help you translate." Just as Lu Cheng was holding his phone and chatting with a smile, the woman outside continued to knock on the door. She had made up her mind that if he appeared again, she would take extreme measures. She would throw herself at him, fish in troubled waters, and take advantage of the situation. No man would call the police for such a romantic encounter that had nothing to lose. Knock, knock, knock. She knocked on the door in despair. Then, she saw even more despair when two burly hotel security guards appeared at the intersection not far away. They shouted loudly, "Miss, which room are you in?" 10 minutes later, the woman returned to the car outside the hotel in a fluster. She complained to the leader of the Japanese delegation in the back seat, "That person is very vigilant, unlike many men who are always thinking about romantic encounters and easily fall for the bait. He will definitely report it. This method can't be used anymore. I think it's better to bribe the hotel's janitor to collect the information." No, every day before the janitor cleans, their leader will ask for the room card to check the room. The leader of the Japanese delegation pondered. "I'll think of another way." The next morning, Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun, and the rest entered the Xinxiang Martial Arts Stadium that they had booked earlier. Renli looked around but didn't look at Peng Liyun. She said seriously to Lu Cheng and An Chaoyang, "I want to spar with him separately." Is this a hidden method to deal with Peng Liyun? Lu Cheng pondered. Although he was curious, to avoid suspicion, he turned to An Chaoyang and said, "You spar with Renli." "I'll go with Peng Liyun." "Okay." And Chaoyang had calmed down and didn't decline. When the two of them went to another arena, Lu Cheng saw that Peng Liyun was still in a daze. So, he told the leader about the strange incident last night. "Well done." Zhong Ningtao was stunned for a few seconds. He nodded with a smile and reminded, "Tell me earlier next time." Lu Cheng was about to reply when he saw Peng Liyun's eyes regain their vigor. He shook his neck, making crisp cracking sounds. August 23, 7:30 p.m. After a day of rest, the flames of the King of Youth tournament reignited. The strongest four were about to be decided. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.